While I was at work, my parents cleared out my kids' rooms and shoved all their things into the basement, insisting, "Your nephew deserves the best rooms in the house." When I walked in to find my children in tears, I simply smiled and said, "Go pack your bags." They had no idea the storm they just unleashed. I opened the front door expecting to find my children asleep in their beds after my 18-hour shift. Instead, Lucas sat on the living room couch in his pajamas, tears streaming down his face as he held a trash bag full of his belongings. "They said we don't deserve nice rooms anymore, Mom. They said your nephew is more important than us." The words cut through my exhaustion like a scalpel through skin. Maya emerged from the hallway, dragging her violin case and a pillowcase stuffed with clothes. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there: anger. At 8 years old, my daughter had learned what injustice felt like, and I could see it burning in her expression. "Where are your things supposed to go?" I asked, though dread was already pooling in my stomach. "The basement," Lucas whispered. "Grandpa showed us where they put our beds. It smells funny down there and there are spiders." I knelt in front of my son, still wearing my hospital scrubs that reeked of antiseptic and other people's emergencies. For 18 hours I had saved lives, comforted families, and held everything together with professional competence. Now, in my childhood living room, I felt completely powerless. "Tell me exactly what happened," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Maya set down her violin case with careful precision. "Uncle Ryan and Aunt Natalie came over after dinner. They had baby Oliver with them and he was crying a lot. Grandma said he needed a quiet room for his naps, and Aunt Natalie said she needed somewhere to work on her computer for her important job." Lucas nodded vigorously. "Then Grandpa said the basement was perfectly good for kids our age, and that we should be grateful we have somewhere to sleep at all. When I asked about my asthma and the dust down there, he said I was being dramatic." Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these real-life family stories. If you believe children deserve equal love and respect, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more families facing similar challenges. Now let's see how this story unfolds. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. These were the same people who had offered us shelter 18 months ago when my marriage to Marcus imploded. The same people who had watched me work myself to exhaustion, contributing every penny I could while rebuilding my life from scratch. "Where are Grandma and Grandpa now?" I asked. "In the kitchen with Uncle Ryan and Aunt Natalie," Maya replied. "They're talking about how to make baby Oliver's room perfect. Grandma said she wants to buy him one of those expensive swinging chairs that cost as much as a car payment." I stood slowly, my nurse's training kicking in as I assessed the situation like a medical emergency. 2 children in emotional distress. Family dynamics reaching a critical point. Immediate intervention required. The voices from the kitchen drifted down the hallway: Dorothy's excited planning, Frank's agreeable murmurs, Ryan's entitled demands, and Natalie's particular requirements for her workspace. They were discussing paint colors for the nursery while my children sat in the living room with their belongings in garbage bags. "Mom," Lucas tugged at my scrub top. "Are we really not family like baby Oliver?" The question shattered something inside me. Not the dramatic kind of breaking that happens in movies, but the quiet, definitive snap of a bone under too much pressure. I looked at my son, brilliant, sensitive Lucas, who read at a 5th grade level and worried about endangered animals. Then at Maya, fierce, talented Maya, who had just one first-chair violin in her school orchestra despite everything we'd been through. "You are absolutely family," I said firmly. "And don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But even as I said it, I could see the truth we'd all been avoiding. We weren't family here, we were charity cases. Temporary residents whose presence was tolerated as long as we remained grateful, quiet, and invisible. I thought back to the day we'd first arrived, when Dorothy had made such a show of clearing out the guest rooms for us. How she'd emphasized repeatedly that this was just until you get back on your feet. How every contribution I made to the household was met with a reminder that they were helping me out during a difficult time. The laughter from the kitchen grew louder. Someone, probably Natalie, made a joke about finally having the space we need. More laughter followed. "Get your most important things," I told the twins quietly. "Just what you need for tonight." "Are we leaving?" Maya asked, and I heard hope threading through her exhaustion. "Not tonight," I said, though my mind was already calculating possibilities. "But soon. I promise you that." I helped them gather essentials, school clothes for tomorrow, toothbrushes, the stuffed animals they still needed for comfort. As we worked, I made mental notes. Our lease agreement was month to month. My savings account had been growing steadily from overtime shifts, though I'd been telling myself it was just emergency money. Maybe it was time to admit this qualified as an emergency. The basement door stood open and I could smell the musty dampness wafting up. 2 mattresses had been thrown directly onto the concrete floor. No bed frames, no attempt at making the space livable. Just the bare minimum required to technically provide shelter. "I won't sleep down there," Maya said with quiet determination. "It's not safe for Lucas's breathing and it's not fair." My 8-year-old daughter had more backbone than the adults in this house. The realization filled me with both pride and heartbreak. "You won't have to," I promised. "Tonight you'll both sleep in my room like we're having a sleepover. Tomorrow we'll figure out something better." As I tucked them into my childhood bed, Maya asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom, why do they love baby Oliver more than us?" I smoothed her hair, searching for words that would be honest without destroying her faith in family entirely. "Sometimes adults make decisions based on fear rather than love. Grandma and Grandpa are afraid of disappointing Uncle Ryan, so they're prioritizing his family's wants over everyone else's needs." "But that's not fair," Lucas whispered. "No, it's not fair. And that's why we won't accept it." After they fell asleep, I sat in the quiet darkness and opened my banking app on my phone. The savings account showed $3,847. Not enough for first month's rent and security deposit in most places, but getting closer. I scrolled through rental listings, calculating possibilities. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened a new browser tab and started researching my rights as a tenant, even in a family home. What I found was enlightening. Even living with relatives, I had certain protections. They couldn't just move my belongings or change my living arrangements without proper notice. More importantly, I had options. I pulled up rental websites and started saving listings. 1-bedroom apartments that we could manage with my salary. 2-bedroom places that would require careful budgeting but were possible. 3-bedroom houses that seemed impossible now but wouldn't be forever. For the first time since Marcus had asked for the divorce, I felt something other than fear about our future. Lying there in my childhood room with my children breathing softly beside me, I started planning our real escape. Not just from this house, but from the mindset that had kept me accepting scraps when we deserved so much more. The house settled around us with familiar creaks. Down the hall, Dorothy's television provided background noise to what I now recognized as the last night we would spend as grateful, silent guests. Tomorrow things would change. Maybe not dramatically, maybe not immediately, but definitively. I closed my eyes and made a promise to the darkness and to my sleeping children. We would not beg for basic respect. We would not raise another generation to accept emotional crumbs. And we absolutely would not let anyone convince us we were less deserving of love and consideration than a baby who didn't even live here. The foundation of our temporary arrangement had always been fragile. Tonight it had finally cracked beyond repair. But sometimes I realized, you had to let the broken things fall apart completely before you could build something stronger in their place. The morning brought an illusion of normalcy that lasted exactly until my phone rang during my coffee. Ryan's voice carried an excitement I hadn't heard since his college graduation. "Isabella, we have incredible news. Natalie and I are expecting." Before I could even process the announcement properly, he was already launching into logistics. "We want to tell Mom and Dad in person tonight. Can you make sure the kids are on their best behavior? This is really important to us." I stared at my reflection in the kitchen window, still processing. Another grandchild. Competition for attention that Maya and Lucas were already losing. "Congratulations, Ryan. That's wonderful news." "Thanks. Oh, and make something special for dinner, will you? Natalie's been having morning sickness, so maybe that chicken dish Mom always loved? You know how to make it better than anyone." The casual assumption that I'd handle the celebration dinner for his announcement rankled, but I agreed. Maya and Lucas were still asleep, and I had a few hours before my afternoon shift to prepare what would apparently become a coronation feast. When Ryan and Natalie arrived that evening, they carried themselves with the gravity of visiting dignitaries. Natalie wore a flowing dress that emphasized her barely visible pregnancy, while Ryan's chest puffed with pride as they gathered us in the living room for their special announcement. Dorothy's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Tears sprang to her eyes as she pressed both hands to her heart. "Oh my goodness! Frank, did you hear that? We're going to have another grandchild." The emphasis on another stung as if Maya and Lucas were somehow practice rounds for the real thing. Frank beamed, immediately launching into stories about Ryan's own baby days, while Dorothy began rapid-fire planning for nursery preparations, baby showers and photography sessions. "We'll need to get the house ready for visits," Dorothy declared, her mind already racing ahead. "The library would make a perfect nursery. All those books can be moved to the garage." Maya looked up from her homework. "But Grandma, don't they live in their own house?" "Well, yes, dear, but when they visit with the baby, we'll need proper accommodations. Babies require so much equipment." Lucas frowned. "What kind of equipment?" Natalie laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both musical and condescending. "Oh, you'll see, Lucas. Babies need cribs, changing tables, special chairs, monitors, warmers, so many things you probably don't remember needing." The conversation continued around my children as if they were observers rather than participants. Ryan discussed his plans to take paternity leave, Natalie outlined her birthing preferences, and my parents hung on every word. When Maya tried to share that she'd been selected for advanced violin lessons, Dorothy waved her quiet. "Not now, sweetheart. We're discussing important family news." The transformation of the library began the very next weekend. Professional contractors arrived to remove built-in bookshelves that had held Frank's collection for 30 years. Dorothy supervised with the intensity of a general commanding troops, directing the placement of custom-ordered nursery furniture that cost more than my monthly contribution to the household. "Isn't this exciting?" Dorothy asked as painters applied the first coat of pale yellow to the walls. "Our grandson will have the most beautiful room." Maya stood in the doorway, watching strangers dismantle what had been her favorite reading space. "Where will all the books go?" "Storage," Frank replied dismissively. "Books can go anywhere. But a nursery needs to be perfect." The irony wasn't lost on me that Maya and Lucas had been sleeping on twin beds pushed together in the converted den for over a year, while my parents were creating a palace for a baby who would visit occasionally. When I mentioned this to Dorothy privately, she looked at me as if I'd spoken in another language. "That's completely different, Isabella. Maya and Lucas are big kids who can adapt. Babies have very specific needs." The nursery project consumed the next month. Dorothy documented every stage on social media, posting photos of paint swatches, furniture assembly and decoration placement. Her captions gushed about preparing for our precious grandson and creating the perfect space for baby Oliver. Meanwhile, Maya's request for a small desk in their shared space was deemed unnecessary clutter, and Lucas's suggestion of hanging his science project certificates was met with concerns about keeping the walls clean. When baby Oliver finally arrived, the household dynamic shifted so dramatically it felt like living in a completely different home. Dorothy canceled her weekly volunteer commitments to be available for visits. Frank rearranged his workshop schedule around potential babysitting duties. The refrigerator, once covered with Maya and Lucas's artwork and achievement certificates, was cleared to make room for professional newborn photos. The first time Ryan and Natalie brought Oliver for an extended visit, I watched my parents transform into entirely different people. Dorothy spoke in hushed, reverent tones about every sound the baby made. Frank, who had always been practical about children's needs, suddenly became an expert on infant development, analyzing Oliver's every movement for signs of advanced intelligence. "Look how alert he is," Dorothy whispered as Oliver stared blankly at the ceiling. Ryan was exactly the same way, so aware of his surroundings. Maya attempted to show her grandmother a poem she'd written for school. "Grandma, my teacher said this was really good and wants to submit it to a contest." "That's nice, dear," Dorothy replied without looking away from Oliver. "Maybe later. I need to watch for his feeding cues." The baby wasn't even hungry. He was simply existing in the way all babies do, but to Dorothy and Frank, every breath was a miracle worth documenting and celebrating. Christmas that year became a study in contrasts that would have been comical if it weren't so painful. The living room overflowed with gifts for Oliver, a luxury stroller that cost more than most people's rent, designer clothes he'd outgrow in weeks, educational toys for a child who couldn't even focus his eyes properly yet. Maya unwrapped her modest collection of books and art supplies with grace that broke my heart. Lucas smiled genuinely at his new science kit, though I saw him glance toward the mountain of gifts surrounding Oliver's carrier. "Why does baby Oliver get so many presents?" Lucas asked quietly as we cleaned up wrapping paper later. Dorothy overheard and knelt beside him with a patronizing smile. "Well, honey, babies need so many things to grow up healthy and strong. You and Maya already have everything you need." The message was clear. Maya and Lucas were complete, finished products requiring minimal investment. Oliver was a precious project deserving unlimited resources and attention. The breaking point came during Maya's violin recital 3 months later. She had worked for weeks to perfect her solo piece, and the school had selected her to represent her grade at the district competition. I arranged my schedule specifically to attend, excited to watch my daughter's moment of triumph. Dorothy had promised to come. Maya had practiced extra hard, knowing her grandmother would be watching. But an hour before the recital, Dorothy called to cancel. "I'm so sorry, dear, but Ryan needs me to watch Oliver while they go to a doctor's appointment. You understand how important the baby's health is." I understood perfectly. My daughter's achievement ranked below babysitting duty for her uncle's family. I sat alone in that auditorium, watching Maya's face scan the audience for her grandmother's proud smile that would never come. After the recital, Maya climbed into our car with her first place ribbon and asked the question that shattered my remaining illusions about our living situation. "Mom, does Grandma love baby Oliver more than us because we're not really her family?" In that moment, sitting in the school parking lot with my talented, perceptive daughter, I realized we had been reduced to temporary residence in a home that prioritized biology over relationship, potential over achievement, and someday over right now. The golden grandson had arrived, and Maya and Lucas had become invisible in the shadow of his anticipated greatness. That conversation in the car after Maya's recital was still echoing in my mind when Ryan called 3 weeks later. His voice carried a stress I'd rarely heard from my usually confident brother. "Isabel, we have a situation. The contractors found serious foundation issues at our place. We're going to need somewhere to stay while they fix it." I gripped the phone tighter, watching Maya and Lucas play in our cramped den space. "How long are we talking about?" "Maybe 6 to 8 weeks. I know it's not ideal, but Mom and Dad have plenty of room, and with Oliver being so little, we really need the help." The audacity of the statement stunned me. Plenty of room. We were already living 3 people to what had originally been a home office, while Oliver's nursery sat pristine and largely unused. "Ryan, the house is already pretty full with us here. Come on, sis. Family helps family, right? Besides, Mom's been wanting more time with Oliver anyway." Before I could respond further, I heard Dorothy's voice in the background, clearly having been listening to the entire conversation. "Of course they'll stay here. We'll make it work." The decision had been made without consulting me, despite the fact that my children and I would bear the brunt of the overcrowding. When I tried to call Dorothy directly to discuss logistics, she brushed off my concerns with practiced ease. "Isabella dear, this is what families do. Ryan and Natalie are in crisis, and we have an obligation to help them through it. What about Maya and Lucas's needs? Where exactly is everyone supposed to sleep? We'll figure it out. Perhaps the children could share one room more efficiently." The moving day arrived with all the ceremony of a royal relocation. Frank appeared at 7 in the morning with a borrowed truck, ready to help transfer Ryan and Natalie's belongings. I watched from the kitchen window as he carefully wrapped their furniture in moving blankets, the same man who had shrugged when my dresser got scratched during our move 18 months earlier. Dorothy fluttered around the house, rearranging closets and clearing storage space for Natalie's extensive wardrobe. The front hall closet, where I'd been keeping our winter coats and emergency supplies, was emptied entirely to accommodate their belongings. "Where should I put our things?" I asked, holding an armload of displaced items. "Oh, just find somewhere temporary," Dorothy replied, too focused on creating hanging space for Natalie's professional wardrobe to give the question proper attention. Ryan and Natalie arrived with enough luggage for a months-long vacation. Suitcases, diaper bags, a portable crib, high chair, bouncy seat, play mat, and countless other baby accessories that immediately claimed every available surface in the common areas. "This is so generous of you, Dorothy," Natalie gushed as Frank carried her designer luggage to the master guest suite. "We really appreciate having a proper space during this stressful time." Maya appeared at my elbow whispering, "Mom, where are all their things going to go?" I was wondering the same thing. Within hours, Our already cramped living situation had become genuinely chaotic. Oliver's equipment dominated the living room, creating obstacle courses around furniture. The kitchen counters disappeared under bottles, sterilizers, and specialized baby food makers. The house rules shifted immediately and dramatically. Dorothy posted a handwritten schedule on the refrigerator outlining Oliver's nap times, feeding schedule, and quiet periods that seemed to encompass most of the day. "Maya, sweetheart," Dorothy said as my daughter attempted her usual after-school violin practice, "baby Oliver is sleeping right now. Perhaps you could practice later." "But this is when my teacher said to practice," Maya replied, confusion clear in her voice. "Well, we need to be flexible now that we have a little one in the house." I watched my daughter carefully pack away her violin, the same instrument Dorothy had once praised as beautiful music that fills the house with joy. Now it was noise that interfered with the golden grandson's rest. Lucas faced his own adjustments. His habit of reading aloud during homework was banned as too disruptive. His collection of science books, previously scattered around the den for easy access, had to be contained in one small box to make room for Oliver's toys. "But I can't find my astronomy book," Lucas complained quietly to me one evening. "It's probably in the storage box under your bed," I suggested, though I felt the unfairness of the situation acutely. A baby who couldn't even sit up yet somehow required more space than two school-age children. The dining room transformation was perhaps the most telling change. Natalie announced she needed a proper workspace for her consulting business, claiming the kitchen table was too chaotic for professional video calls. Within days, my parents had converted the formal dining room into a makeshift office, complete with professional lighting and a backdrop for meetings. "Where are Maya and Lucas supposed to do their art projects now?" I asked Dorothy, gesturing to the table where my children had spread out school assignments for over a year. "They can work in their room, can't they? Or the kitchen table when Natalie isn't using it." The kitchen table that was perpetually covered with Oliver's feeding supplies, sterilization equipment, and Natalie's breast pump accessories. The room that had shrunk to accommodate twin beds with barely walking space between them. "Mom," I said carefully, "the kids need space to spread out their homework too. Maya's science fair project requires a lot of materials." "Well, perhaps she could choose a smaller project this year," Dorothy suggested, as if my daughter's educational opportunities should be adjusted to accommodate house guests. The evening that everything crystallized was a Tuesday in late September. Maya had been practicing violin in the converted den our room, with the door closed to muffle the sound. She was preparing for an important audition that could earn her a scholarship for advanced lessons. Natalie burst through our door without knocking, baby Oliver fussing in her arms. "Maya, you absolutely have to stop that noise. Oliver is trying to sleep, and I have a client call in 10 minutes that could be worth thousands of dollars to our family." Maya lowered her violin, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Aunt Natalie. I was trying to be quiet." "Well, it's not working. Some things are more important than hobby practice." I felt something snap inside me as I watched my talented daughter being dismissed so casually. Maya is preparing for an audition that could provide her with advanced music education. This isn't a hobby, it's her passion and potential future. Natalie's expression shifted to barely concealed irritation. "Isabella, I understand you want to support Maya, but we need to be realistic about priorities. Oliver's sleep schedule affects his development, and my work supports this entire family's financial stability." The implication was clear. My daughter's musical education was a luxury that interfered with more important family needs. My children's growth and opportunities were secondary to Oliver's nap schedule and Natalie's business calls. That night, as I tucked Maya and Lucas into their cramped beds, Maya asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Mom, why do we have to give up everything for baby Oliver? We were here first." I sat on the edge of her bed, searching for an explanation that wouldn't destroy her faith in fairness entirely. Sometimes adults make decisions based on who they think needs help the most, rather than what's actually fair. "But we need help too," Lucas observed quietly. "We need space for homework and practicing and just being kids." He was absolutely right. We did need help, support, and consideration. Instead, we were being systematically erased from our own temporary home to make room for house guests who were being treated like honored royalty. As I listened to Oliver's cries echoing through the house at 2 in the morning, followed by Natalie's demands for different room temperature and Dorothy's immediate compliance, I realized we weren't living with family anymore. We were living with strangers who happened to share our DNA, and those strangers had made it abundantly clear where our place was in their hierarchy of importance. The unwelcome houseguests had arrived, and they were rewriting the rules of our existence one day at a time. The morning I left for what would become a 28-hour marathon at the hospital, I made sure to leave detailed instructions on the kitchen counter. Maya's violin practice schedule, Lucas's reading time, bedtime routines, and a reminder about their weekend plans. I even wrote a note asking Dorothy to include them in family conversations during dinner, since they'd been growing quieter each day. Make sure they feel special today, I'd written at the bottom. They've been having a hard time adjusting to all the changes. The emergency department was understaffed that weekend, with 3 nurses calling in sick and a multi-car accident that kept us running non-stop. By hour 20, my feet ached and my back screamed, but the overtime pay would go straight into my secret savings account. Every exhausting hour was another step toward independence. During my brief break around midnight, I texted Maya, "Hope you had a good day with Grandma and Grandpa. Love you both. See you tomorrow afternoon." Her response came quickly, "Love you too, Mom. Can't wait for you to come home." Something in those words felt urgent, but exhaustion clouded my judgment. I assumed she simply missed me after the long shift. The drive home Sunday evening should have prepared me for what I'd find. Even from the driveway, the house felt different. No lights in the den where Maya and Lucas usually read before bed. No violin music drifting from the windows. Just an unusual quiet that made my stomach tighten. I found them exactly as I described earlier. Lucas in his pajamas holding a trash bag of belongings, Maya clutching her violin case with tears streaming down her face. But what I hadn't mentioned was what happened next, after they explained about the basement and their banishment from the upstairs rooms. "When did this happen?" I asked, kneeling between them. "Right after lunch," Maya whispered. "Uncle Ryan said Oliver needed more space to crawl around, and Aunt Natalie said she needed a bigger office because her business was growing." Lucas nodded, his voice shaking. "Grandpa said the basement was an adventure, like camping indoors. But Mom, there are bugs down there and it smells funny and the walls are wet in some places." I felt my professional composure cracking. These were the same children I'd specifically asked to be included and cherished while I worked to support our family. Instead, they'd been literally relegated to the basement to make room for a 9-month-old who couldn't even crawl yet and his mother's expanding business empire. "Show me," I said quietly. The basement stairs creaked under our weight as we descended into what could only be described as a dungeon. The single bare bulb cast harsh shadows across concrete walls. 2 mattresses lay directly on the floor, surrounded by hastily dumped belongings. Maya's carefully organized art supplies were scattered in cardboard boxes. Lucas's beloved book collection was stacked against a wall that showed clear water damage. The smell hit me, then musty dampness mixed with something else. In the far corner, dark spots climbed the foundation wall like a disease spreading through the concrete. "Lucas," I said, my voice carefully controlled, "you cannot sleep down here with your asthma." "I told them that," he replied, his 8-year-old voice heavy with defeat. "Grandpa said I was being dramatic and that fresh air would be good for me anyway." Fresh air. In a basement with one window that barely cracked open and visible mold contamination. I climbed the stairs with my children behind me, my nurses training cataloging safety violations and health hazards with each step. The kitchen glowed with warm light, laughter spilling from the adjacent living room where my family was enjoying their Sunday evening in comfort. They looked up as we entered, Dorothy at the kitchen table organizing Oliver's feeding schedule, Frank reading his newspaper, Ryan bouncing Oliver on his knee while Natalie scrolled through her phone. "Isabella," Dorothy exclaimed with manufactured cheer. "How was your shift? We've had such a lovely weekend with the children." "Lovely," I repeated, looking at my tear-stained kids. "I saw their new accommodations downstairs." Frank folded his newspaper with deliberate precision. "We thought they'd enjoy having their own space. Kids love adventures." Adventures. The word tasted bitter. "You moved my children to an unfinished basement with mold exposure and inadequate ventilation." Ryan looked up from Oliver, his expression shifting to mild annoyance. "Come on, Isabella. You're being dramatic. It's perfectly fine down there. We made sure they had everything they needed." "Everything they needed?" I gestured toward Lucas. He has asthma. That environment could trigger a serious attack. Natalie finally looked up from her phone. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. I grew up sharing a room with 3 sisters. A little character building never hurt anyone. The casual dismissal of my children's well-being, delivered while she sat in the comfort of the converted dining room office, crystallized everything wrong with our situation. Where exactly did you grow up sharing that room? I asked quietly. He blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? You grew up in a 5-bedroom house in Westfield. I've seen the photos on your social media. Which 3 sisters were you sharing with in that mansion? A flush crept up her neck as Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Well, that's not really the point. It's exactly the point. I turned to Dorothy. You spent $3,000 creating a nursery for a baby who visits twice a week, but you think the basement is appropriate for the children who live here every day. Dorothy's face hardened. Now you listen here, Isabella. We've been more than generous letting you stay here, and we won't be spoken to like this in our own home. Your nephew deserves the best rooms in the house, she continued, her voice rising with righteous indignation. Oliver is family and family comes first. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Maya made a small sound beside me, and I saw Lucas's face crumple with understanding. Oliver is family, I repeated slowly. And what exactly are Maya and Lucas? Frank stood, his newspaper forgotten. Tao, that's enough. You're being completely unreasonable. The basement is perfectly suitable for children their age. They should be grateful they have somewhere to sleep at all. Grateful. I looked at each of them in turn. Dorothy with her self-righteous anger, Frank with his dismissive authority, Ryan with his entitled smirk, Natalie with her casual cruelty. My children should be grateful for a moldy basement while you create a palace for their cousin. Ryan's smirk widened. Where exactly do you think you're going to go, Isabella? It's not like you have a lot of options here. That smirk. That casual assumption of my helplessness. That absolute certainty that I was trapped and dependent and would accept whatever scraps they offered. I felt something settle over me then, not anger, not hurt, but a crystalline clarity that cut through months of self-doubt and accommodation. Pack your bags, I told Maya and Lucas quietly. The smirk vanished from Ryan's face. What? You heard me. I looked at my children, seeing hope flicker in their eyes for the first time in weeks. Pack what you need for tonight. We're leaving. You can't be serious, Dorothy sputtered. Where on earth do you think you're going? I smiled then, feeling power I hadn't known I possessed. Somewhere my children are valued. Somewhere they don't have to be grateful for basement scraps while other children get palace treatment. The stunned silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. The stunned silence stretched for exactly 3 heartbeats before chaos erupted. Ryan shot to his feet, nearly dropping Oliver in the process. Isabella, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave because you didn't get your way. Pie way. I kept my voice level, though adrenaline coursed through my veins. My way would have been my children being treated with basic respect and dignity. Apparently that was too much to ask. Maya and Lucas stood frozen beside me, uncertain whether to move. I placed a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. Go pack your most important things. Just what you need for a few days. Wait. Dorothy jumped up, her face flushed with panic. Let's not be hasty here. We can discuss this like adults. Maybe we were a bit thoughtless about the room arrangements. A bit thoughtless? I almost laughed at the understatement. You moved my children to a moldy basement without my knowledge or consent while I was working to support this family. Frank stepped forward, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he'd used throughout my childhood. Now see here, Isabella. You're not thinking clearly. Where exactly do you plan to go? You can't afford your own place, and you certainly can't drag those children around from hotel to hotel. There was the assumption that had underlied every interaction for the past 18 months. The belief that I was financially helpless, professionally inadequate, and completely dependent on their charity. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, turning the screen toward them. I've been saving every extra shift, every overtime hour, every penny I could squeeze from our budget. I have enough for first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. The color drained from Ryan's face. You've been planning this? I've been preparing for independence, I corrected. Something I should have done months ago. Natalie finally spoke up, her voice sharp with accusation. So this whole time you've been living here under false pretenses, pretending to be grateful while secretly plotting to leave? I've been living here while contributing financially and practically to this household, I replied evenly. The only false pretense was believing my children would be treated as valued family members rather than inconvenient house guests. Dorothy's tears started, then dramatic, desperate sobs designed to manipulate. Isabella, please. We're family. Families work through their problems together. We can fix this. Can we? I challenged. Can you explain to Maya why her violin practice suddenly became noise pollution when it used to be beautiful music? Can you tell Lucas why his respiratory health is less important than Oliver's nap time? We never said, Frank began. You didn't have to say it. Your actions spoke clearly enough. I gestured toward the pristine living room where Oliver's equipment dominated every surface. When was the last time you displayed Maya's artwork on the refrigerator? When did you last attend one of Lucas's school events? The silence was answer enough. Maya and Lucas returned with their hastily packed belongings, moving with a quiet efficiency that broke my heart. Maya carried her violin case and a small bag containing her most treasured possessions. Lucas clutched his stuffed elephant and a backpack full of his favorite books. Where are we going, Mom? Maya asked quietly. Before I could answer, Ryan's voice cut across the room with cruel certainty. Nowhere. She's bluffing. Isabella doesn't have anywhere to go. I met his smug gaze directly. Actually, I signed a lease on a 3-bedroom house last week. The keys are in my purse and the utilities are already connected. The transformation in their expressions was remarkable. Smugness shifted to shock, then disbelief, then desperate calculation. A 3-bedroom house? Dorothy's voice cracked. How on earth can you afford that? By working extra shifts while you provided childcare, by saving every possible penny, and by maintaining excellent credit despite a difficult divorce. I picked up Maya's violin case. Ironically, your help with the children enabled me to work enough overtime to afford our escape. Frank's face turned an alarming shade of red. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Sneaking around behind our backs. I repaid you every day, I replied calmly. $800 monthly, cooking most meals, cleaning, and ensuring my children respected your rules. What I didn't realize was that respect only flowed one direction in this family. Ryan made one last attempt at control. You're making a huge mistake, Isabella. That house will eat up your entire salary. You'll be back here within 3 months begging for help. Maybe, I acknowledged. But at least my children will have their own rooms with windows that open and walls without mold. They'll have space to practice their instruments and do their homework without being told they're inconvenient. Natalie's voice turned venomous. Fine. Leave then. But don't expect us to come running when this little rebellion fails. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had casually dismissed my daughter's education as a hobby and relegated my son to a basement that could trigger his asthma. Natalie, I said quietly, some bridges need to burn. The foundation was rotten anyway. Dorothy made one final desperate plea. Isabella, please. Think about what you're teaching the children. That when things get difficult you just run away. I knelt down so I was eye level with Maya and Lucas. What am I teaching you both right now? Maya considered the question seriously. That we're worth fighting for? That we don't have to accept being treated badly just because people say they love us? Lucas added. That families should make each other feel safe and valued, Maya continued, understanding dawning in her voice. I stood, pride swelling in my chest. Exactly. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. The drive to Patricia's house was quiet but not tense. Maya and Lucas sat in the back seat, processing the enormity of what had just happened. I called Patricia from the driveway, explaining our situation briefly. Come on up, she said immediately. I've got the guest room ready and some leftover lasagna that needs eating. Patricia met us at her door with warm hugs and no questions beyond, are you all okay? She'd prepared her guest room with fresh linens, set out towels, and even had a selection of movies ready for the kids. I can't thank you enough, I began, but she waved me off. You do the same for me, she said simply. Now who wants hot chocolate while we figure out our next steps? Sitting in Patricia's cozy kitchen watching Maya and Lucas finally relax for the first time in months, I felt the weight of our decision settle into something that felt like peace rather than panic. My phone buzzed with texts from my parents, alternating between guilt trips and threats, pleas and anger. I turned it face down without reading them all. "Are we really free now?" Lucas asked quietly. I looked at my brave, resilient children and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. We're really free." That night, lying between Maya and Lucas in Patricia's guest room, I listened to them breathe deeply and peacefully. Tomorrow would bring challenges, moving logistics, paperwork, the reality of starting over. But tonight we were safe, we were valued, and we were finally truly free. The morning sun streamed through the windows of our new house 3 days later, casting golden rectangles across hardwood floors that belonged to us. Maya stood in the doorway of what would become her room, violin case in hand, eyes wide with possibility. "I can practice any time I want?" she asked, as if the concept were too wonderful to believe. "Any time," I confirmed, watching her face light up with joy I hadn't seen in months. "These are your hours, your space, your music." Lucas was already arranging his books on the built-in shelves in his room, organizing them by subject with the methodical precision he'd inherited from his father. "Mom, look. I can spread out my science experiments on this whole desk, and nobody will make me clean them up for baby equipment." The house was modest, a 1950s ranch with 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that opened into a living room where natural light poured through large windows. But it was ours. Every decision about furniture placement, wall colors, and household rules belonged to us. That first week brought a parade of small revelations. Maya practiced violin for 2 hours straight without anyone shushing her. Lucas read aloud from his astronomy book without whispered reminders about quiet time. I cooked dinner while they did homework at the kitchen table, their papers and projects spread across the entire surface without apology. "This feels like a real home," Maya said one evening as we ate takeout pizza on the living room floor, still surrounded by unpacked boxes. "What makes it feel real?" I asked, curious about her 8-year-old perspective on our dramatic life change. "Nobody's angry at us for existing," she replied with startling clarity. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "And we can laugh as loud as we want." Their observations hit deeper than they knew. In our old temporary arrangement, we had indeed been constantly apologizing for existing, for making noise, taking up space, having needs that conflicted with other priorities. The following Monday, I returned to work with an energy my colleagues immediately noticed. Patricia pulled me aside during our lunch break, studying my face with professional assessment. "You look different," she observed. "Lighter somehow." "I feel different. Like I can breathe properly for the first time in months." My productivity at work increased dramatically without the constant underlying stress of navigating family politics at home. Dr. Martinez, the emergency department director, called me into his office 3 weeks after our move. "Isabella, I've been watching your performance lately, and I'm impressed with your leadership during crisis situations. How would you feel about taking on more supervisory responsibilities?" The promotion to head nurse came with a substantial salary increase and regular daytime hours that would allow me to attend Maya's concerts and Lucas's academic competitions. For the first time since my divorce, I felt professionally valued rather than just functionally useful. Meanwhile, news from my parents' house filtered through family, friends, and social media posts that told interesting stories between the lines. Dorothy's Facebook updates about helping with baby Oliver became increasingly frequent, often posted at odd hours suggesting sleep deprivation. Her formerly pristine house appeared cluttered in background photos, with baby equipment dominating every visible surface. Patricia shared gossip from her book club, where Dorothy occasionally appeared looking frazzled and overwhelmed. She mentioned that taking care of Oliver full-time is more challenging than she remembered from her own children, Patricia reported with carefully neutral expression. Through my cousin Jennifer, I learned that Ryan and Natalie's relationship was experiencing significant strain. The renovation project had stretched far beyond the original timeline, with mysterious delays and cost overruns that suggested financial difficulties. Jennifer mentioned seeing them at couples counseling sessions at the community center. Apparently, they're struggling with the transition to parenthood without the support system they expected, Jennifer said carefully, clearly trying to avoid taking sides in family drama. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ryan and Natalie had assumed my parents would provide unlimited childcare and household support while they maintained their careers and social lives. Without my practical contributions to the household management, Dorothy and Frank were discovering the reality of caring for an active baby while maintaining their own routines. 6 months after our escape, I received an unexpected text from Frank. "Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I'd like to discuss some things." We met at a neutral cafe downtown where Frank looked older and more tired than I remembered. He ordered coffee with hands that shook slightly, whether from age or stress I couldn't determine. "I owe you an apology," he began without preamble. "Your mother and I handled the situation poorly. We let favoritism cloud our judgment about what was fair to you and the children." His admission was gratifying, though it came too late to change our circumstances. "What made you realize that?" He sighed heavily. "Living with Ryan and Natalie full-time showed us how much work you were doing that we took for granted. The cooking, cleaning, organizing, emergency childcare when needed. We assumed it was natural for you to handle everything because you're so competent. And because I was the one who needed help," I added quietly. "Yes. We confused needing temporary housing with being helpless or incompetent. We were wrong." He paused, stirring his coffee unnecessarily. "Dorothy misses the children terribly. She asks about them constantly." "They miss their grandparents too," I replied honestly. "But they also remember how it felt to be treated as less important than their cousin. Would you consider allowing supervised visits? Maybe at a park or restaurant where everyone feels comfortable." I considered his request carefully. Maya and Lucas had asked about their grandparents, though without the desperate longing I might have expected. They seemed more curious about Dorothy and Frank's well-being than eager for reconciliation. "I'll discuss it with Maya and Lucas. Any relationship going forward happens on their terms, not adult expectations." 8 months after leaving my parents' house, I signed mortgage papers for a small 3-bedroom home with a blue front door and a backyard perfect for Lucas's outdoor science experiments. The closing process was surreal. Sitting in a law office, signing documents that made me a homeowner at 34, single and successful and completely independent. Maya and Lucas stood in our new kitchen that first evening, marveling at the space and light. "We really own this whole house?" Lucas asked, running his hands along granite countertops that showed no water damage or mold. "We really do. And nobody can make us leave or change the rules or tell us we don't deserve to be here." That night, as I tucked them into beds and rooms they decorated with their own choices, Maya asked the question that had been building for months. "Mom, are you proud of us for being brave when we left Grandma and Grandpa's house?" I sat on the edge of her bed, overwhelmed by the maturity and insight of my 8-year-old daughter. "I'm proud of us for recognizing that we deserved better treatment and having the courage to insist on it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you're worth." Lucas called from his room. "And sometimes you have to pack your bags and build your own life." Their laughter filled our house, loud, joyful, unapologetic laughter that nobody would ever again ask them to quiet for someone else's comfort. We had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that family isn't about blood relations or obligation, but about mutual respect, consistent love, and the choice to value each person for who they truly are. Our sweet independence had become the foundation for something even better, a life built on dignity, respect, and the unshakable knowledge that we were worthy of love without conditions. If this story of ultimate independence had you rooting for Isabella, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Isabella calmly told her children to pack your bags, while her family stood there stunned. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more inspiring stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.
I'm Amber Williams, 31, a corporate lawyer in New York with an office view most would envy. But right now, I can't focus on anything but the phone call I just received. My brother Tyler and I have always been close despite our 5-year age gap. When he got engaged to Natalie Hudson, daughter of that real estate mogul, I was thrilled. Until today. The wedding planner just called, saying so casually it was chilling, "Your family's invitation has been canceled, but we're keeping the deposit." The $65,000 deposit my parents scraped together. Before I tell you how this nightmare unfolded, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow this journey of betrayal that forced me to choose between family loyalty and my brother's happiness. Growing up in our modest Connecticut neighborhood, Tyler was always my shadow. Despite being 5 years younger, he followed me everywhere, from soccer practice to debate club meetings where he'd sit quietly in the back, drawing buildings in his sketchbook. Our parents, James and Catherine Williams, worked tirelessly, Dad as a high school history teacher and Mom managing a local bookstore, to give us opportunities they never had. Our home wasn't fancy, a 3-bedroom colonial with worn carpet and outdated kitchen cabinets, but it was filled with laughter, impromptu dance parties, and endless discussions around our scratched oak dining table. Every Sunday, we'd gather for Mom's famous pot roast, a tradition that continued even through my grueling law school years when I'd make the tower train ride home just to be present. Family first, Dad always said. Everything else is just noise. I worked 3 jobs during law school: barista mornings, library assistant afternoons, and bartender weekends. Tyler watched my graduation with tears in his eyes, prouder than anyone when I landed my associate position at Hartman and Reed. When I helped him apply to architecture programs years later, it felt like completing a circle. "You're going to design buildings that change skylines," I told him the day his Columbia acceptance arrived. Tyler flourished in architecture school, his natural talent for spatial design earning him recognition from professors and peers alike. During his final year, he attended a charity gala showcasing young designers. That's where he met Natalie Hudson. The Hudsons were New York aristocracy, with buildings bearing their name across Manhattan. Harold Hudson had transformed his father's modest construction company into a real estate empire, while his wife Stephanie was known for orchestrating social events that regularly appeared in glossy magazines. When Tyler first brought Natalie to our parents' home for dinner, the contrast was immediately apparent. She arrived in a chauffeur-driven car, wearing pearl earrings that probably cost more than our living room furniture. Yet initially, she seemed warm, complimenting Mom's cooking and asking Dad thoughtful questions about his teaching. "Tyler talks about your family constantly," she said, squeezing my brother's hand. "I feel like I already know you all." My parents were clearly nervous. Mom had spent 3 days planning the menu and Dad wore his only suit, but they were overjoyed to see Tyler so happy. I noticed how he carefully explained certain family traditions to Natalie, like our competitive after-dinner Scrabble games, as though translating a foreign culture. The engagement came 6 months later. Tyler called me first, his voice bubbling with excitement. "She's the one, Amber. I've never felt this way about anyone." Our family was thrilled, though privately, Mom expressed concerns about the wedding costs. "These people live differently, honey," she whispered to me while washing dishes after the engagement dinner. "I just hope we can keep up without embarrassing Tyler." The first real tension surfaced during initial wedding discussions. Stephanie Hudson took immediate control, dismissing the small botanical garden venue my parents suggested. "The Hudson name requires certain standards," she said during a planning lunch, barely glancing at my mother's carefully researched options. "We've already put a hold on the Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom. It's really the only appropriate choice." When Mom mentioned their budget constraints, Stephanie waved her hand dismissively. "Harold and I will handle the major expenses, of course. We just expect the traditional family contributions for certain elements." The certain elements remained undefined, but the message was clear. The Williamses were expected to perform financially, regardless of their means. Tyler began changing subtly after the engagement. His visits home became less frequent. He traded his comfortable flannel shirts for tailored button-downs, started using phrases like "summer in the Hamptons" naturally in conversation, and developed opinions about wine he'd previously considered all the same. "The Hudsons are helping me make connections," he explained when I questioned the new gold watch on his wrist. "This is important for my career, Amber." When I visited his apartment, now in an upscale neighborhood thanks to a loan from Harold, I noticed our family photos had disappeared from his walls, replaced with abstract art pieces that Natalie had selected. "Don't you think you're changing a bit too much for these people?" I asked directly one evening. I'm evolving, he countered. The Hudsons understand how the world works at a different level. They're helping me see opportunities one never knew existed. What he couldn't see was how each opportunity pulled him further from the grounded, compassionate brother I'd always known. The architectural designs he proudly showed me now featured luxury developments rather than the sustainable community spaces he'd once been passionate about. As wedding planning intensified, Tyler became a stranger, captured in Natalie's orbit and the gravitational pull of Hudson wealth. Our parents noticed, but remained silent, afraid any objection might drive him further away. He's an adult making his choices, Dad said, though his eyes reflected concern. All we can do is be here when he needs us. None of us realized then just how severely that family loyalty would soon be tested. The Hudson estate sprawled across 2 acres of manicured landscape in Greenwich, Connecticut, its stone facade and columned entrance more reminiscent of a European palace than a family home. As our modest sedan approached through wrought iron gates, I felt my parents tense beside me. Maybe we should have hired a car service, Mom whispered, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her navy dress, the most expensive she'd ever purchased at $180. Dad adjusted his tie nervously. We're here to celebrate Tyler, not impress anyone with our transportation. Valets in crisp uniforms appeared as we stopped, opening doors with practiced efficiency. Inside, the foyer alone was larger than our entire first floor at home, with a crystal chandelier that cast rainbow prisms across marble flooring. Stephanie Hudson materialized in a cloud of expensive perfume, air-kissing my mother's cheeks without making contact. Catherine, James, you made it. And Amber, working girl extraordinaire. How is that little law firm treating you? Hartman and Reed is actually one of the top corporate firms in Manhattan, I corrected politely. How charming, she replied without listening, already gesturing to a server. Do circulate, everyone's dying to meet Tyler's. Background. The engagement party unfolded like a theatrical production. Professional photographers captured carefully orchestrated moments while a string quartet played in the corner. Guests represented a who's who of New York society, judges, CEOs, even a minor European royal whose title Stephanie mentioned no fewer than 15 times during introductions. My parents tried valiantly to engage, Dad discussing educational policy with a university president while Mom complimented the intricate floral arrangements. Yet I noticed how conversations seemed to evaporate when Hudson's friends realized the Williamses weren't connected. And what do you do? A woman in diamonds asked my mother. I manage Baldwin's bookshop downtown, Mom answered warmly. Oh. How? Industrious, the woman responded, eyes already scanning for a more advantageous conversation. I found Tyler surrounded by Natalie's friends, laughing too loudly at a joke about summer homes. When he introduced us, his posture changed, slightly distancing himself physically, as though our presence might contaminate his newfound social standing. My sister's the real star, he said, yet the comment sounded rehearsed. First in our family to attend college. Full scholarship. The way he emphasized full scholarship made it sound like an apology for our presence. During dinner, seated at a table far from Tyler and the Hudsons, I excused myself to find the restroom. Passing a partially open library door, I heard Stephanie's distinctive voice. Of course we had to invite them, Diane. They're technically family soon. But don't worry, I'm fixing the wedding guest list to be more appropriate. Harold says we simply can't have the Bergdorf crowd mixing with. Well, you understand. A second voice laughed. The mother's dress is from last season's Nordstrom sale rack. I recognized it immediately. Tyler's quite the diamond in the rough. Natalie sees potential, and you know how she loves projects. At least he photographs well. White-hot anger propelled me through the door. Excuse me. Stephanie turned, momentarily startled before regaining composure. Amber, we were just discussing seating arrangements. Really? Because it sounded like you were discussing my family as though we're some embarrassing secret. I think you misunderstood, Stephanie replied coolly. Perhaps in your world, directness about social compatibility seems unkind, but in proper society, understanding appropriate boundaries is essential etiquette. Proper society? Is that what you call judging people based on their bank accounts rather than their character? Your passion is admirable if misplaced, she said with practiced condescension. Tyler understands the world he's entering. Perhaps you should respect his choices rather than creating unnecessary drama. Before I could respond, Tyler appeared behind me. Everything okay in here? Your sister seems upset about wedding planning details, Stephanie offered smoothly. Such an emotional time for everyone. I looked at my brother incredulously. Tyler, she was literally mocking our parents. Don't you have anything to say? His eyes darted between us, conflict evident. But instead of defending our family, he placed a hand on my arm. Amber, you're overreacting. Stephanie's been incredibly generous with wedding planning. Generous? Tyler, open your eyes. These people are my future family, he interrupted sharply. Natalie's important to me. Can you just be happy for us without creating problems? The betrayal stung like a physical blow. Outside on the terrace, I found my parents sitting alone, smiling bravely despite their isolation. Having fun? Dad asked, though his eyes registered my distress immediately. We should leave, I said quietly, explaining what had happened. Mom placed her hand over mine. We're here for Tyler. If enduring a few uncomfortable hours means supporting him, that's what we'll do. But they're deliberately humiliating you. Sometimes loving someone means swallowing your pride, Dad said softly. Tyler will find his way back to himself eventually. As we prepared to rejoin the party, a man approached our table. Tall with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, he introduced himself as Mason Carter, Natalie's cousin. I wanted to apologize for my aunt's behavior, he said, sincerity evident in his voice. Stephanie can be difficult at best. That's very kind, Mom replied. Are you enjoying the party? About as much as a root canal, he answered with an unexpected grin. These functions are more performance than celebration. For what it's worth, when Tyler talks about your family, his face lights up in a way it never does when discussing the Hudsons. That small moment of genuine connection provided temporary comfort, but driving home later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were losing Tyler to a world measured in possessions rather than principles. None of us anticipated just how calculated that world would prove to be. 2 months before the wedding, as autumn painted Connecticut in brilliant oranges and reds, Stephanie Hudson invited my parents to lunch at the Westbrook, an exclusive country club where membership applications remained on waiting lists for decades. Mom spent hours selecting an appropriate outfit, eventually settling on a burgundy pantsuit she'd purchased for my law school graduation. This feels important, she told me during our pre-lunch call. Stephanie mentioned finalizing wedding details. What made this timing particularly stressful was Dad's recent health scare. After experiencing chest pains while teaching, he'd undergone a series of cardiac tests revealing a condition requiring ongoing medication and monitoring. While not immediately life-threatening, the medical bills had already exceeded $12,000 beyond insurance coverage, depleting most of their emergency savings. I offered to help financially, but Dad refused. We're managing, he insisted with characteristic pride. Your student loans are priority enough. When my parents arrived at the Westbrook, Stephanie was already seated at a prime table overlooking the golf course, a leather portfolio placed precisely beside her water glass. After perfunctory greetings and ordering, Stephanie recommended the salmon without looking at the menu. She opened the portfolio with theatrical flourish. I thought today we could finalize the family contribution details, she announced, sliding a document across the table. As you know, wedding traditions are important to the Hudson family. My father, reading glasses perched on his nose, scanned the paper with growing confusion. I'm not sure I understand. This appears to be a contract for $65,000. Stephanie nodded approvingly. Exactly. While Harold and I are covering the majority of expenses, roughly $300,000, tradition dictates the bride's family handles the reception and the groom's family contributes to the rehearsal dinner, flowers, and certain ceremony aspects. $65,000. Mom repeated, voice barely audible. Stephanie, we've been very clear about our financial situation. Catherine, in our circle, this is actually quite modest. The Van Allens contributed nearly twice this amount for their daughter's wedding last spring. Stephanie sipped her water delicately. Of course, if it's truly impossible, we could always scale back to something more appropriate to your means. Though Tyler and Natalie would be so disappointed. The implication hung in the air. Either meet the Hudson's expectations or embarrass Tyler with a wedding beneath his fiancée's social standing. We'll need time to discuss this, Dad said finally. Of course, Stephanie replied, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. Though the vendors require deposits by next Friday. Shall we say Wednesday for your final answer? The contract specifies payment structure, half immediately as deposit, remainder 30 days before the wedding. That evening, I found my parents at their kitchen table, calculator between them, surrounded by bank statements and mortgage documents. You can't seriously be considering this, I said, reading the contract's exorbitant terms. What choice do we have? Mom asked, eyes red-rimmed from crying. This is Tyler's future. His future shouldn't cost your financial security. This is manipulation, pure and simple. Dad rubbed his temples, fatigue etched in every line of his face. We can take a second mortgage on the house. The interest rate isn't terrible. Dad, you're still paying medical bills. This is insanity. Amber, he said quietly, sometimes being a parent means sacrificing beyond reason. If this is what Tyler needs, we'll find a way. Despite my vehement objections, they signed the contract. The first payment, $32,500, was transferred to an account Stephanie provided, draining their retirement savings and maxing out their home equity line. Mom picked up extra shifts at the bookstore while Dad began tutoring after school hours, despite his doctor's recommendation to reduce stress. When I confronted Tyler at his apartment the following weekend, he seemed genuinely uncomfortable but not surprised. It's standard for wedding families to share costs, he said, not meeting my eyes. Standard? Tyler, our parents are taking out loans for this. Dad's health isn't even stable, and they're working extra hours to afford your wedding to people who clearly look down on them. Shame flickered across his face. You don't understand. That's just how things are done in Natalie's circle. Her parents are actually being generous, covering most expenses. Most expenses? The contract literally specifies hand-carved ice sculptures and imported orchids. Who needs that? It's important to Natalie, he said defensively. More important than Dad's health? Than Mom working herself to exhaustion? Than the values our family actually stands for? Tyler paced his designer living room, a space I barely recognized from the cozy apartment he'd once decorated with flea market finds and architecture books. You've always been like this, he snapped. So judgmental about success. Maybe I want more than what we grew up with. Is that so terrible? Wanting success isn't terrible. Abandoning who you are to become someone else's version of successful? That's just sad. His face hardened. You're jealous. You've always been the star. First college graduate, big shot lawyer. Now I'm building something significant, and you can't stand it. The accusation was so absurd, so contrary to our lifelong support of each other, that I physically stepped back. I don't even know who you are anymore, I whispered. Maybe you never did, he replied coldly. Maybe I was always meant for this world, and our family was just holding me back. I left his apartment that day with an ache that felt physical. The brother who had once built me a bookshelf from scratch when I got my first apartment, who called weekly just to share architecture jokes, who teared up giving the toast at my law school graduation, that person seemed to have vanished, replaced by a stranger chasing approval from people who would never truly accept him. As the wedding date approached, our family fracture widened. Tyler stopped attending Sunday dinners, claiming work deadlines, though Instagram showed him at Hampton's parties with Natalie's friends. When he did call our parents, conversations revolved around additional wedding requests. Could they possibly contribute to the honeymoon fund? Would Mom mind wearing a different dress than the one she'd purchased, as it didn't complement the wedding palette? Each request came with implied judgment. Each conversation left my parents more deflated. Yet still they defended him. He's caught between worlds, Mom rationalized. Once the wedding pressure passes, he'll find his balance again. I wasn't so sure. Something fundamental had shifted, and I feared we might never recover the family we once were. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was preparing for a client meeting. Claire Bennett, the wedding planner, had always been coolly professional during our limited interactions. This time, her voice held artificial sympathy as she delivered her message. Amber, I'm just calling to confirm that you've received the updated information about the Williams family's wedding participation. What updated information? A pause. Oh dear. Well, this is awkward. The Hudsons have decided to cancel your family's invitation to the wedding. The deposit will be retained, of course, as per the contract's cancellation clause. The conference room tilted slightly. Excuse me? I assume Tyler had already discussed this with you. The wedding is taking a different direction, more intimate for family. But I should let him explain the details. More intimate? So the wedding's been scaled back? Not exactly. In fact, we've expanded to accommodate some late additions from the Hudson side. Important connections, you understand. Blood pounded in my ears. So my parents paid $32,500 for a wedding they're now uninvited from? Contract terms are quite clear about non-refundable deposits, Claire replied crisply. I'm simply the messenger. You'll need to discuss the particulars with the Hudsons. I immediately called my parents, hoping against hope this was a miscommunication. Mom answered on the first ring. We just got the call too, she said, voice hollow. Your father's not taking it well. I heard Dad in the background, something crashing. I'll be there in 2 hours, I promised, already gathering my things, explaining a family emergency to my bewildered assistant. The drive to Connecticut never seemed longer. I found my parents in the kitchen, Mom methodically wiping already clean counters, Dad staring at his hands at the table. He won't answer my calls, Dad said without looking up. 5 calls, straight to voicemail. Tyler's blocked my number entirely, Mom added. I tried from the bookstore phone and got his voicemail. Their quiet dignity in the face of such betrayal broke something in me. These people who had sacrificed everything for their children deserved better than this callous dismissal. I'm going to fix this, I promised, though I had no idea how. For 3 days, Tyler remained unreachable. Social media showed him attending suit fittings and bachelor party events, while our parents navigated the humiliation of explaining to relatives why they weren't attending their only son's wedding. On the 4th day, I went to Tyler's apartment and waited in the lobby until he returned from work. His face registered shock, then guilt, then defensive anger when he saw me. You can't just ambush me at my home, he began. You left us no choice, I countered, following him into the elevator. 3 days, Tyler. 3 days while our parents have been devastated. Inside his apartment, he immediately poured himself a drink, something expensive from a crystal decanter that hadn't been there during my last visit. It wasn't my decision, he finally said. Natalie's parents decided to scale down the wedding. Scale down? Your wedding planner mentioned it's actually expanded to 350 people. He flinched. Those are business connections, important for Harold's new development project. More important than your own parents? The people who raised you, who mortgaged their home to pay for this wedding. The apartment door opened, and Natalie entered, freezing momentarily upon seeing me. I thought I heard voices, she said, recovering quickly. Amber, this is a surprise. I'm here about my family being uninvited from the wedding. Natalie placed her designer bag on the counter with deliberate care. That was actually my suggestion. The guest list became unwieldy and, realistically, your family wouldn't fit in anyway. The casual cruelty of her statement hung in the air. Wouldn't fit in, I repeated slowly. With the hedge fund managers and socialites who are apparently more important than the people who raised the groom? Amber, Tyler started, but Natalie interrupted. Let's be honest. Your parents were uncomfortable at every event, wearing last season's clothes, not knowing which fork to use. We're doing them a favor, sparing them further embarrassment. I turned to my brother. And you're okay with this? His eyes couldn't meet mine. Sometimes we outgrow where we came from, Amber. Mom and Dad, they don't understand this world. This world? You mean the world where people discard family for social climbing? That's unfair, he protested weakly. What's unfair is our father working overtime while managing heart condition medications to pay for a wedding he's now banned from attending. Tyler's face paled. Dad's sick. You'd know that if you bothered calling them. His heart condition was diagnosed 2 months ago. You never told me, he whispered. He didn't want to worry you during this important time, I quoted bitterly. He didn't want to be a burden. Natalie sighed dramatically. This is exactly the emotional messiness we're trying to avoid. Tyler's moving into a different phase of life now. A phase where he pretends he wasn't raised by two of the most loving people I've ever known. Where he's ashamed of the family who supported every dream he ever had. I'm not ashamed, Tyler protested, but his eyes said otherwise. Then why allow this? Why not stand up for them? He looked away, swirling his drink. Maybe it's better this way. Less awkward for everyone. That moment, hearing my brother essentially disown our family, crystallized everything. The Tyler I knew was gone, replaced by this hollow imitation crafting himself into whatever shape would please the Hudsons. I never thought I'd say this, I said quietly, but I'm ashamed of you. As I left, Natalie called after me. The ceremony will be live-streamed. They can watch online if they want. The elevator doors couldn't close fast enough on the strangers my brother had chosen over family. The next morning, I woke with purpose burning through my grief. My legal training had taught me that even the most seemingly powerless situations can shift when examined through the right lens. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about justice for my parents. I started by reviewing the contract they'd signed. The language was deliberately convoluted, full of clauses that essentially gave the Hudsons complete control while financial responsibility remained with my parents. But there was something off about the structure of the payments. The deposit had been directed to an account listed under Hudson Wedding Trust rather than to vendors directly. Further digging revealed this account wasn't a trust at all, but a personal account with Stephanie Hudson as the sole signatory. That raised serious questions about where the money was actually going. I called Claire Bennett's office, identifying myself as legal counsel for the Williams family. Her assistant immediately transferred me. Ms. Williams, I've already explained the situation, Claire began. Actually, it's Attorney Williams now, I corrected. I'm calling to request vendor confirmation of deposits paid from the $32,500 provided by my clients. That's confidential information. Not when potential misappropriation of funds is involved. I can request these records formally through legal channels, but I thought offering you the courtesy of a direct conversation first was appropriate. Her tone changed immediately. I simply distribute funds as directed by Mrs. Hudson. I don't track where everything goes. So you can't confirm that the florist, for example, received their deposit from the money my parents provided? Her silence was telling. I'll take that as a no. Expect a formal request for all financial records related to this wedding by end of business today. As I compiled a list of vendors from previous Hudson events covered in society pages, my phone rang with an unknown number. Amber Williams. It's Mason Carter. Natalie's cousin? We met at the engagement party. I remembered him, the only Hudson-adjacent person who'd shown genuine kindness. How did you get my number? Tyler's phone, when he wasn't looking, he admitted. Listen, I heard what happened. It's disgraceful, even by Stephanie's standards. Why are you calling me? Because I think you're investigating and I think I can help. The Hudsons aren't what they appear to be. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop midway between New York and Connecticut. Mason arrived looking nothing like the polished figure from the engagement party, casual in jeans and a faded Harvard sweatshirt, hair slightly rumpled. First thing you should know, he said after ordering, I'm the family disappointment. Went into environmental law instead of real estate, refused to join the family business. It makes me the Hudson outsider with insider knowledge. And why help my family? His expression turned serious. Because what they're doing to your parents is part of a pattern. The Hudsons are in financial trouble. Serious trouble. That building downtown that was supposed to be their next big development? Construction halted 6 months ago when investors pulled out. So why the extravagant wedding? Appearances. In their world, admitting financial difficulty would be suicide. They're desperately maintaining the illusion of success while scrambling for new investors. This wedding is their way of showing everything's fine. And my parents' money? Mason's expression confirmed my suspicions. Almost certainly not going to flowers or ice sculptures. Over the next week, Mason became my unexpected ally. He connected me with former Hudson business partners who'd had similar experiences, requested investments that disappeared into personal accounts, contracts with hidden clauses that heavily favored the Hudsons. Through a paralegal friend at a firm that had previously represented the Hudsons, I discovered they had changed law firms 6 times in 3 years, leaving unpaid legal bills at each one. Most significantly, Mason introduced me to the Clarks, another ordinary family whose daughter had been engaged to Natalie's brother James 2 years earlier. They had paid a $50,000 family contribution before the engagement mysteriously ended, with no refund. They insisted the contract made it non-refundable, Mrs. Clark explained during our meeting. We couldn't afford to fight them legally. The same thing happened to the Rodriguez family before us, Mr. Clark added. It seems to be their method. Find someone from outside their circle, extract money, then find reasons to end the relationship. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file, working late nights after my regular cases. Mason often brought dinner to my office, becoming a sounding board and research partner. His insight into Hudson family dynamics proved invaluable. Stephanie orchestrates everything, he explained one evening as we sorted documents. Harold's actually not a bad person at heart, just weak. He's terrified of her social ambitions. And Natalie? Learned at her mother's knee. She's dated wealthy men before, but Tyler offers something different, talent she can mold, a fresh face for their social circle. Plus, his architecture background lends legitimacy to their struggling development company. As we worked together, I noticed Mason's quick wit, his genuine outrage on my family's behalf, the way he remembered how I took my coffee. Despite the circumstances, I found myself looking forward to our meetings, appreciating his perspective and principles. Why haven't you completely cut ties with them? I asked one night. You clearly see through the Hudson facade. He considered this, absently twirling a pen between his fingers. They're still family. And I keep hoping that one day they'll remember the people they were before money became their only value. My grandfather, Stephanie's father, was a public school teacher who built their first house with his own hands. Sometimes I catch glimpses of that heritage in Harold's quieter moments. His loyalty despite disagreement made me reflect on my own situation with Tyler. I understand that. No matter how angry I am at my brother, I still remember who he used to be. The difference, Mason said gently, is that your brother still has a chance to find his way back. My family's been lost for generations. With sufficient evidence gathered, I consulted Eliza Sharma, a law school friend specializing in fraud cases. This is textbook misappropriation, she confirmed, reviewing our findings. The family contribution was explicitly for wedding expenses, but financial records show it went directly to personal accounts and unrelated business debts. Do we have enough for legal action? More than enough. But first, let's try a more direct approach. Sometimes the threat of exposure is more effective than actual litigation. Together, we drafted a formal letter detailing the evidence and demanding full refund of my parents' money plus damages, with a 48-hour deadline before we would file legal action and contact financial journalists who'd recently been investigating the Hudson Group's troubled projects. The response was immediate, a call from Harold Hudson himself, requesting a private meeting. Bring your evidence, he said, voice lacking his usual bluster. And please, don't contact any reporters before we talk. The stage was set for confrontation. What remained uncertain was whether Tyler would finally see the truth about the family he was so desperate to join. The Oakmont Country Club exuded old money from its limestone facade to the oil paintings of stern-faced founders lining mahogany-paneled hallways. Mason and I arrived precisely at 7, when the rehearsal dinner would be midway through its second course. My parents had wanted to come, but I insisted they stay home. This might get ugly, I'd told them. Let me handle it. Mason adjusted his tie as we approached the private dining room. Ready? As I'll ever be. The scene inside was exactly as expected: crystal chandeliers illuminating white-clothed tables, centerpieces of imported roses, waitstaff moving silently between guests in evening wear. Stephanie held court at the head table beside Natalie, both resplendent in designer dresses that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Tyler sat beside them, handsome in his tuxedo, but looking somehow diminished among the Hudson grandeur. I caught his eye as we entered, watched shock register on his face. Stephanie noticed immediately, her smile freezing as she gestured to a security guard. "I'm afraid we have party crashers, Bernard." Mason stepped forward. "They're with me, Aunt Stephanie." The room quieted, conversations halting as guests sensed drama unfolding. Harold Hudson approached quickly, face flushed. "This isn't the time or place," he hissed. "Actually, it's exactly the right time and place," I replied, voice carrying in the sudden silence. "Since everyone's gathered to celebrate, they should know exactly what they're celebrating." Stephanie rose, diamonds glittering at her throat. "Security, please remove them." I held up my hand. "Before you do that, you might want to consider the file I'm holding. Copies have already been sent to the SEC, the District Attorney's Office, and the New York Times financial desk." That stopped her cold. "What is this about?" asked an elderly man I recognized as a prominent judge from Mason's briefing. "It's about fraud," I said clearly. "It's about the Hudson family extracting $32,500 from my parents, a high school teacher and a bookstore manager, for wedding expenses that were never actually paid to vendors." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Instead, I continued, that money went directly to Stephanie Hudson's personal account, then was transferred to cover interest payments on the failing Hudson Tower development downtown. Harold stepped forward. "These are ridiculous accusations. I have the bank records," I interrupted, opening the file. "Just as I have records of the same pattern with the Clark family 2 years ago when their daughter was engaged to James. And the Rodriguez family before them. A pattern of extracting family contributions that mysteriously disappear when the engagements end." Tyler had risen from his seat, face ashen. "What is she talking about?" he asked Natalie, who remained remarkably composed. "Your sister is creating a scene with baseless allegations," she replied coolly. "Exactly why we decided your family shouldn't attend the wedding." Mason moved beside me. "The allegations aren't baseless, and you know it, Natalie. Your family is nearly bankrupt. The only thing keeping creditors at bay is the illusion of prosperity this wedding provides." A distinguished-looking man stood from a nearby table. "Harold, is this true? You assured our investment group the Hudson Tower financing was secure." "Of course it's secure, Raymond," Harold stammered. "These are merely domestic misunderstandings. Then you won't mind explaining why vendor contracts for this wedding show deposits that were never actually paid?" I projected copies of documents onto my tablet, passing it around. The florist, the caterer, the venue itself, all showing balance books in the wedding planner's records, but when contacted directly, none had received payments matching the amounts my parents provided. Tyler pushed away from the table, approaching me. "Amber, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you've been manipulated, Tyler. We all have. The Hudsons needed your talent and credibility for their business, and they needed our family's money to maintain appearances." "That's absurd," Natalie interjected. "My family has more wealth than you could imagine." "Had," Mason corrected. Past tense. The Hudson Group has been operating on borrowed funds and investor confidence for years. 3 banks have called in their loans in the past month alone. Tyler turned to Harold. "Is this true?" The room had grown painfully quiet, wealthy guests exchanging uncomfortable glances as the facade crumbled before them. Harold's shoulders slumped, the bluster finally deserting him. "We hit some temporary cash flow issues. The wedding was meant to reassure investors, show stability." "By stealing from my family?" Tyler's voice cracked. "It wasn't stealing," Stephanie insisted. "It was reallocation of resources. Once new investment came in after the wedding, everyone would be paid. Including my parents." Eventually, she admitted. The betrayal on my brother's face was heartbreaking to witness. He turned to Natalie. "Did you know about this?" Her hesitation was answer enough. "Of course she knew," Mason said quietly. It's the family business model. Tyler stepped back as though physically struck. All this time, the comments about my family, pushing them away, it wasn't about social standing at all, was it? It was about making sure they wouldn't ask questions about where their money went. Tyler, don't be dramatic. Natalie reached for his hand. This changes nothing between us. It changes everything. He removed his engagement ring, placing it on the table. I don't know you at all. As the room erupted in whispered conversations, a distinguished older woman, later identified as a major Hudson investor, approached us. Young lady, I'd be very interested in reviewing those documents more thoroughly. Perhaps we could speak privately. Within an hour, the rehearsal dinner had transformed into something resembling a creditors' meeting, with investors cornering Harold in various corners of the room. Mason handled most inquiries, directing people to appropriate authorities while I found Tyler sitting alone on the terrace, staring at nothing. I'm so sorry, I said, joining him. I'm the one who should be apologizing, he replied, voice hollow. What I said to you to Mom and Dad. I was so blinded by everything Natalie represented. You fell in love. It happens. Not with Natalie, he said with sudden clarity. With the idea of her world. The connections, the opportunities. I convinced myself I deserved it all, that our family was holding me back. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. How can I ever face Mom and Dad again? The same way they've always faced you, with unconditional love. As the evening concluded, Harold Hudson approached us on the terrace, looking every bit his 68 years. The full amount will be returned to your parents tomorrow, he said quietly, plus an additional $30,000 for distress. And the other families? I pressed. Them too. All of it. He glanced toward the dining room where Stephanie was being questioned by former friends. For what it's worth, this wasn't how it began. We were in trouble, yes, but the wedding was real. Natalie does love Tyler in her way. Her way isn't enough, Tyler said simply. As we left, Mason walked us to our car. What will you do now? I asked him. Damage control, mostly. Some of these people were friends of my parents. They deserve better than my family gave them. Something had shifted between us during this ordeal, a connection formed through shared purpose and mutual respect. Maybe when this settles down, I suggested, we could have dinner sometime. Without financial documents and family drama. His smile reached his eyes. I'd like that very much. Tyler was quiet on the drive home, processing everything that had happened. But as we neared our parents' house, he finally spoke. I need to make this right, Amber. Not just the money. Everything. You will, I assured him. That's what family does. We find our way back to each other. The return of the $65,000, including the promised additional compensation, arrived in my parents' account exactly as Harold had promised. The Hudsons, facing multiple investigations from regulatory agencies and civil lawsuits from investors, retreated from public view. Their company filed for bankruptcy protection within weeks, and their Greenwich estate was listed for sale shortly after. Tyler's journey back to himself proved more complicated than the financial resolution. The first Sunday after the confrontation, he stood nervously on our parents' doorstep, shoulders hunched like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. I don't know what to say, he admitted when Mom opened the door. She simply pulled him into a hug. Then don't say anything yet. That Sunday dinner was quiet, conversation careful, and focused on neutral topics. Dad, still hurt but trying, asked about Tyler's work projects. Mom served his favorite apple pie. The elephant in the room remained unaddressed until Tyler finally put down his fork. I need to say this, he began, voice unsteady. What I did, how I treated you both, was unforgivable. I got caught up in a world that made me ashamed of the best people I've ever known. I don't expect you to forget that, but I need you to know how deeply I regret it. Dad studied him for a long moment. The hardest lesson a parent learns is that we can't protect our children from their own mistakes. We've watched you drift away for months, unable to stop it. I was so stupid, Tyler whispered. No, Mom corrected gently. You were human. Seduced by a world designed to make people feel inadequate unless they buy into it completely. The question is, what have you learned? That question marked the beginning of Tyler's genuine reconciliation with our family. Unlike his superficial transformation into Hudson-approved society, this change came from within, painful but authentic. He moved out of the luxury apartment, finding a modest place in his old neighborhood. He resigned from the prestigious firm that had hired him through Harold's connections, instead joining a small studio focused on sustainable community projects. "I'm back to designing buildings that matter," he told me over coffee one afternoon, "not just monuments to wealth." The architectural talent that had attracted Natalie remained, but now it served his original passion rather than status-seeking. His first major project, a community center in an underserved neighborhood, received recognition for innovation while maintaining budget constraints. My parents used part of the returned money to finally take their dream trip to Europe, something they'd postponed for decades while raising us. Photos arrived daily, Mom beaming beside Roman fountains, Dad looking scholarly in British museums, both of them slightly sunburned on Mediterranean beaches. "Your father climbed all the steps at Montmartre despite his doctor's concerns," Mom texted. "Says his heart feels stronger than ever." The rest of the money went into their retirement fund and a small foundation they established to help students from their high school attend vocational training or college, creating opportunities from what had nearly been catastrophe. My own life took unexpected turns in the aftermath. The detailed financial investigation I'd conducted caught the attention of a law firm specializing in financial fraud protection. They offered a partnership track position that aligned perfectly with my growing interest in defending ordinary people against corporate manipulation. And then there was Mason. Our promised dinner extended into weekly meetings, conversations flowing easily between professional ambitions and personal philosophies. His dedication to environmental causes complemented my social justice focus, and despite our different backgrounds, we shared core values about family, integrity, and purpose. "You know," he said during an autumn walk through Central Park, "my family never understood that real wealth isn't about bank accounts or social position." "What is it about then?" I asked, though I already knew my own answer. "Having people in your life who stand by you at your worst moments, who tell you hard truths, who celebrate your real accomplishments, not your acquisitions." He took my hand, a gesture that felt both new and somehow familiar. "People like your family. People like you." 6 months after the wedding that never was, we gathered for Sunday dinner, my parents tanned from their travels, Tyler looking more like his authentic self than he had in years, and Mason, now a regular guest at our table. The conversation flowed easily around jobs, community projects, and Dad's new hobby of French cooking inspired by their travels. The painful past wasn't forgotten, but had transformed into hard-earned wisdom. "I got a letter from Natalie," Tyler mentioned as we cleared dishes. "She's in Europe with her mother. Their assets are mostly frozen pending investigations, but apparently some distant relative took pity on them." "Are you okay?" I asked, searching his face for lingering regret. He considered this honestly. "I am. Sometimes I still wonder how I could have been so completely fooled, but then I remember what you told me that night. I fell in love with an idea, not a person." "Some ideas are seductive," Dad commented, "especially when they play on our insecurities." "The Hudsons built their entire existence on making others feel inadequate," Mason added. "It was never about you, Tyler." Mom returned from the kitchen with coffee. "The silver lining is that you found your way back to yourself before making a lifetime commitment to something hollow." Tyler nodded, genuine smile returning. "And I've learned that real success isn't measured by the address on your business card or the people at your dinner table. It's about creating something meaningful, being surrounded by genuine relationships." "Speaking of creating something meaningful," I said, changing the subject, "Mason and I have news." All eyes turned to us as Mason took my hand. "We're starting an advocacy group," he explained, "providing legal support to families victimized by financial schemes like the Hudsons. Amber's firm is providing pro bono hours, and we've already got 3 cases." The pride in my parents' faces meant everything, not because we were announcing professional success, but because they recognized we were building something aligned with our values. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the porch swing with Dad, watching fireflies emerge in the summer twilight. "You know what I keep thinking about," he said quietly. "What's that?" "How close we came to losing everything that matters by chasing things that don't." I leaned against his shoulder, just as I had as a little girl. "We didn't lose it, though. That's what counts." "No," he agreed. "In fact, I think we found something even stronger." Tested relationships have a certain resilience to them. Looking through the window at my mother laughing with Tyler and Mason in the living room, I knew Dad was right. The journey had been painful, but the family that emerged was more authentic, more appreciative of what truly constituted wealth. Not the kind that could be deposited in banks or displayed at society weddings, but the kind that sustained you through life's hardest moments, the wealth of belonging completely and being loved without condition. "Have you ever wondered what might have happened if we hadn't discovered the truth about the Hudsons?" I asked. Dad considered this. "I imagine we would have watched Tyler drift further away, becoming someone we didn't recognize, always seeking approval he could never quite secure. And now? Now I think he understands what I've known all along, that true success isn't about climbing social ladders, but about building a life that reflects your authentic values." As the evening ended and we said our goodbyes, Tyler hugged me tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Not just for the money, but for not giving up on me." "That's what family does," I reminded him. "We find our way back to each other." Driving home with Mason beside me, I reflected on how unexpected life's turns could be, how the wedding that was supposed to elevate Tyler into a better social circle had instead revealed the hollowness of that aspiration, while strengthening the bonds that truly mattered. What seemed like catastrophe had ultimately been clarifying, burning away pretense and leaving only what was genuine. "Penny for your thoughts?" Mason asked. "I was just thinking about value," I replied. "How the things that cost us most aren't always what's most valuable." He smiled, understanding immediately. "And sometimes what seems like a terrible loss turns out to be the beginning of something better." I couldn't have said it better myself. Have you ever experienced someone choosing status or appearances over authentic relationships? What helped you maintain your values when faced with social pressure? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family loyalty, navigating difficult relationships, and finding your way back to what truly matters. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Sometimes the most painful experiences lead us exactly where we need to be. I'm Sarah Wilson, 27, the invisible middle child in what everyone called our picture-perfect family. 15 years ago, my sister Lauren's accident changed everything. Our parents always cared more about appearances than truth, about their reputation than my broken body. I never understood why I was the one hospitalized after Lauren's accident until those X-rays revealed what everyone tried to hide. The truth always finds a way to surface, even when buried under perfect family portraits and practiced smiles. Before I share this painful family secret I've kept for 15 years, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe that truth, however painful, is always worth fighting for. Growing up in our affluent Boston suburb, my family appeared flawless from the outside. My father, Dr. Thomas Wilson, was a renowned neurosurgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. His steady hands saved countless lives, and his name appeared regularly in medical journals. My mother, Diane Wilson, maintained her position as the neighborhood's premier socialite, organizing charity galas that attracted Boston's elite while serving on multiple community boards. Our Tudor-style home with its manicured lawn and seasonal decorations regularly featured in local lifestyle magazines. Then there were us kids, the 3 Wilson children, each with our assigned roles. Lauren, 2 years my senior, embodied perfection as the golden child. She maintained a straight-A record from kindergarten through high school, captained both the debate team and girls' swimming team, and played violin at a near-professional level. Her college applications boasted volunteer work at homeless shelters and summer internships at Father's Hospital. Lauren's striking blonde hair and athletic build drew admiring glances, while her charisma attracted a circle of equally accomplished friends. Tyler, 3 years younger than me, claimed the position of family baby and charming troublemaker. His mischievous grin and dimples got him out of any tight spot. When he set off the school fire alarm in 3rd grade, my parents laughed it off as boys being boys. When he crashed my father's car at 16, they bought him a newer model, claiming he needed to learn responsibility with better safety features. Tyler's mediocre grades never sparked concern. He was finding his path and socially gifted. And then there was me, Sarah, the forgotten middle child. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't exceptional either. My solid B+ average earned brief nods at dinner discussions dominated by Lauren's achievements. My position on the yearbook committee didn't compare to leadership roles. I wasn't ugly or beautiful, just average height, average brown hair, average features that didn't stand out in family photos. I existed in the margins of our family narrative, desperately trying various activities to earn a moment's recognition. Sarah needs to apply herself more, my father would say during our mandatory Sunday family dinners. Lauren was already preparing for her SATs at your age. These dinners epitomized our family's obsession with appearances. Mother would spend hours preparing Instagram-worthy meals, positioning each of us around the mahogany dining table in a tableau of familial harmony. Father sat at the head, mother at the foot, golden child and baby boy on one side, forgettable middle daughter on the other. We rehearsed acceptable dinner topics, school achievements, community service opportunities, neighborhood gossip that reflected well on us. The Johnson's daughter was rejected from Princeton, mother would whisper with barely concealed satisfaction. Apparently, her volunteer hours were mostly fabricated. Imagine the embarrassment. Public appearances required coordinated outfits, not matching exactly, but complementary colors that photographed well. Mother trained us to answer questions about our family with scripted responses. Yes, we're blessed to have such a close-knit family, Lauren would recite to admiring neighbors. My parents really support all our individual interests, I'd echo, though I couldn't name a single time they'd attended my school art show. I discovered photography in 8th grade when Mr. Abernathy, my art teacher, loaned me an old Nikon. Through that viewfinder, I found escape from family pressure. I could control what was visible and what remained hidden, unlike in our family, where imperfections were scrubbed away, denied existence. I photographed abandoned buildings, rusted playground equipment, cracked sidewalks, beauty and imperfection that would never be allowed in the Wilson family narrative. As Lauren entered her junior year of high school, her perfectionism intensified. I'd hear her pacing at night, witness her meticulously rewriting notes until her handwriting achieved flawlessness. She calculated and recalculated her GPA, obsessing over maintaining her valedictorian status. Swimming practices extended by hours as she pushed for record-breaking times. The pressure mounted as college application season approached. Yale has been the Wilson family school for generations, father reminded her constantly. Your grandfather would be so proud to see you continue the tradition. I never expected my small moment of recognition to trigger the first crack in Lauren's perfect facade. The local arts council hosted a youth photography contest, and on a whim, I submitted a series of photos titled Invisible Middle. Black and white images capturing the space between objects, the gap between buildings, the negative space between branches, the empty chair at a dinner table. To my shock, I won first place. The newspaper featured my photo and a small interview. For one dinner, conversation centered on my achievement. Father mentioned a client whose daughter attended a prestigious art program. Mother suggested hosting a small reception to display my work. Lauren, unusually quiet, pushed food around her plate. It's just a local contest, she finally said. Not exactly Yale material. Lauren, Mother scolded lightly, be supportive of your sister. I'm being realistic, Lauren countered. Photography is a hobby, not a career. Sarah needs to focus on academics if she wants to succeed. Just like that, my moment evaporated. Father agreed about practicality, Mother pivoted to Lauren's upcoming swim meet, and Tyler asked to be excused for a video game session with friends. I retreated back to invisibility, but not before catching Lauren's expression, not triumph, but relief. That was the first time I glimpsed how fragile her perfection truly was, how threatened she felt by any diversion of attention from her carefully constructed narrative. I didn't understand then that in a family built on appearances rather than authentic connection, recognition was a zero-sum game. If I gained visibility, Lauren lost precious spotlight. And in the Wilson family hierarchy, that simply wasn't allowed to happen. 2 years later, our family dynamics shifted into increasingly dangerous territory. Lauren, now 18, was in her senior year and hyper-focused on her Yale application. Early admission results would arrive in December, and the pressure transformed our already tense household into a minefield of expectations. Meanwhile, at 16, I was finally developing my own identity outside of Lauren's shadow. My friendship with Mia Castillo provided the authenticity missing from my family relationships. The daughter of Mexican immigrants who owned a local restaurant, Mia possessed a confidence and warmth entirely absent in my social circle. She spoke her mind, embraced her cultural heritage, and supported her family's business while maintaining excellent grades. My parents, predictably, found reasons to disapprove. The Castillos seem like nice people, Mother commented after Mia dropped me off one evening, her emphasis on nice, carrying unmistakable condescension. But you should really strengthen your connections with the Henderson girl. Her father is on the hospital board with your dad. Amanda Henderson is boring and fake, I replied, a rare moment of defiance. Mia is genuine. Genuine doesn't get you into Ivy League schools, Father interjected without looking up from his medical journal. Connections do. As I found my voice, Lauren seemed to be losing hers. Dark circles formed permanent residences under her eyes. Her typically perfect appearance showed subtle signs of deterioration: chipped nail polish, hair pulled back rather than perfectly styled, school uniform lacking its usual precise pressing. During swim meets, her normally flawless technique grew sloppy, costing her team valuable points. One evening in October, our family gathered for another mandatory dinner. Mother had prepared her famous roast chicken with seasonal vegetables, precisely arranged on our heirloom china. Father discussed a complicated surgery he'd performed that morning, expecting appropriate expressions of awe from his audience. I have something to announce, I said during a rare moment of silence. I've been researching art programs for college. Rhode Island School of Design has an amazing photography department. The silence that followed felt like a physical entity, heavy and suffocating. Mother's fork paused midway to her mouth. Father's jaw tightened. Tyler, sensing tension, became intensely interested in his mashed potatoes. Art school. Father finally spoke, his tone suggesting I'd announced plans to join a cult. Photography isn't a practical career path, Sarah. Pre-med is the obvious choice for someone with your capabilities. But I don't want to be a doctor, I countered. I want to be a photographer. Photography can remain a lovely hobby, Mother offered with a tight smile. Many doctors have creative outlets to balance the stress of their profession. It's not a hobby for me. It's what I want to do with my life. This is just a phase, Father dismissed. You'll outgrow it when you understand the realities of the job market. No daughter of mine will struggle as a starving artist when she could have a respectable medical career. I looked to Lauren, expecting her usual perfect daughter agreement with our parents. Instead, she surprised me. I think Sarah's photography is really good, she said quietly. Maybe she should follow her passion. The comment felt off somehow, not genuinely supportive but calculated. Before I could analyze it further, Father redirected the conversation to Lauren's Yale application, and the moment passed. Later that week, I overheard an intense argument from Father's study. Curious, I lingered outside the partially open door. A 92 on the physics midterm is unacceptable, Lauren. Father's voice carried the cold disappointment he reserved for major transgressions. Yale doesn't accept students who can't maintain perfect GPAs. I've been studying constantly, Lauren's voice sounded desperate. I barely sleep anymore. Perhaps you need better time management, Mother suggested. Sarah mentioned seeing you at the mall with friends last weekend. 1 hour, Lauren's voice cracked. I took 1 hour after swimming 6 extra practices that week. Your sister wouldn't have mentioned it if she wasn't concerned about your focus, Mother replied. I froze in the hallway. I hadn't mentioned seeing Lauren at all. I'd been at Mia's house that weekend. My parents were using me as a surveillance tool against my sister, creating competition where none existed. The next morning, I passed the bathroom as Lauren exited. A small orange prescription bottle disappeared into her pocket when she noticed me. Her eyes, bloodshot and surrounded by dark circles, narrowed slightly. Did you tell Mom and Dad you saw me at the mall? She demanded. No, I was at Mia's all weekend, I answered truthfully. I didn't see you anywhere. Lauren studied my face, deciding whether to believe me. Something had changed in her expression, a hardness that hadn't been there before, calculation replacing her former confidence. They're turning us against each other, I ventured, trying to form an alliance. Maybe we should stay out of my business, Sarah, she interrupted. Focus on your little pictures and leave me alone. 2 weeks later came the first physical incident. I was carrying a basket of laundry down to our basement when Lauren appeared at the top of the stairs. I barely registered her presence before feeling a hard shove against my back. The world tilted as I tumbled down the wooden steps, laundry flying around me as I tried to grab the railing. I landed in a heap on the concrete floor, pain shooting through my wrist. Oh my God, Sarah. Lauren rushed down, face contorted with what looked like concern. You're so clumsy. Are you okay? My parents, hearing the commotion, appeared at the top of the stairs. What happened? Mother demanded. Sarah tripped on the laundry basket, Lauren explained before I could speak. I tried to catch her but couldn't reach in time. I opened my mouth to contradict her but stopped when I saw Lauren's expression, a silent warning in her eyes that made my blood run cold. I guess I wasn't watching my step, I mumbled instead. The sprained wrist earned me a brief visit to Father's colleague's office and a brace for 2 weeks. Typical Sarah, Father sighed as we drove home. Always with her head in the clouds instead of watching where she's going. I began noticing Lauren watching me with a strange expression when she thought I wasn't looking. Not anger exactly, but assessment, as if calculating something. Fear grew in my stomach each time I caught that look. I tried convincing myself I'd imagine the push, that Lauren wouldn't deliberately hurt me, but doubt lingered. When I confided in Mia about my suspicions, she didn't dismiss them. Competitive siblings can get intense, she said as we sat in her family's restaurant after closing. But physical violence crosses every line. Has she always been jealous of you? Jealous? Of me? The concept seemed absurd. She's the golden child. I'm nobody in our family. Maybe that's changing, Mia suggested. Maybe your photography is threatening her perfect daughter status. And if Yale rejects her, what's her identity then? I shook my head, unwilling to believe Lauren could see me as competition. She's always been the star. I'm just there. Sometimes the person with everything fears losing it more than the person with nothing fears not gaining it, Mia said with wisdom beyond her years. I dismissed Mia's theory until the morning I found my photography portfolio destroyed. The custom folder containing prints for my school application lay on my bed, water damage warping the photos beyond repair. My memory card containing digital backups was missing from my desk drawer. The careful, deliberate destruction couldn't be anything but intentional. And only one person had reason to ensure my artistic future disappeared. Did you do this? I demanded, barging into Lauren's meticulously organized bedroom and holding up my ruined portfolio. My hands shook with a mixture of grief and rage. Months of work, my best photographs, destroyed beyond recovery. Lauren looked up from her laptop, Yale application essays displayed on the screen. Her expression shifted from annoyed at the interruption to something colder, more calculated. Do what? She asked with practiced innocence, but her eyes gave her away. Satisfaction flickered briefly before she controlled her features. My portfolio is ruined. Someone poured water on all my prints and stole my memory card. I stepped closer, courage fueled by loss. This was my future, Lauren. She closed her laptop deliberately and stood, suddenly seeming taller though we were nearly the same height. You think anyone cares about your stupid pictures? You're nothing in this family. I'm the one with real talent, real potential. Photography. She laughed, a sound entirely devoid of humor. That's just your pathetic attempt to stand out. Her words struck with precision, targeting insecurities she'd observed over years of living alongside me while never truly seeing me. I backed toward the door, clutching my ruined portfolio. Mom and Dad will hear about this, I threatened weakly. Tell them, Lauren shrugged with supreme confidence. They'll assume you left water too close to your precious pictures. Careless Sarah, always daydreaming instead of paying attention. She was right, and we both knew it. My word against Lauren's had never been a fair contest in our household. I retreated without another word, Lauren's satisfied smile burning into my back. I needed space to process this new reality, that my sister, my own blood, could deliberately destroy something so important to me. I climbed out my bedroom window onto the small section of roof that had become my secret refuge over the years. From this perch, I could see beyond our perfect neighborhood to the city skyline in the distance, a reminder that a whole world existed outside the suffocating perfection of the Wilson family. The crisp October air bit through my thin sweater as I hugged my knees to my chest. The destroyed portfolio represented more than lost photographs. It symbolized Lauren's determination to eliminate any threat to her position, however minor. How had competition for our parents' approval twisted her into someone capable of such calculated cruelty? Sarah? Lauren's voice startled me. She stood at my window, one leg already through. Can we talk? Wariness kept me silent as she navigated onto the roof, maintaining careful distance between us. Her expression appeared contrite, shoulders slightly hunched, body language suggesting regret. I'm sorry about your pictures, she offered, voice soft. I was stressed about college applications and took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Suspicion prevented immediate forgiveness. Lauren never apologized. She justified, rationalized, or redirected blame. This performance didn't align with the sister I knew. Why would you do that? I asked, genuine confusion in my voice. My photography doesn't affect your Yale application. Lauren sighed, gazing toward the horizon. You don't understand the pressure. Mom and Dad expect absolute perfection. I can't show any weakness. Her voice cracked convincingly. And then you found your thing, something you're genuinely talented at, and they actually paid attention to you for once. Barely, I scoffed. For like 5 minutes before returning to the Lauren show. But those 5 minutes terrified me, she admitted. What if they started noticing you more? What if they realized I'm barely holding everything together? She pulled a small orange bottle from her pocket, the same one I'd glimpsed earlier. I need these just to keep up with expectations. I leaned forward, reading the prescription label. Adderall, prescribed to someone named Jennifer Morris, not Lauren Wilson. You're taking someone else's prescription drugs? Alarm replaced my anger. Lauren, that's dangerous and illegal. You could get expelled if school found out. See? This is why I can't talk to anyone, she snapped, mask of contrition slipping. Everyone just judges instead of understanding. I'm trying to understand, I insisted. But this isn't healthy. You need help, not pills. We should tell Mom and Dad, tell them what? Lauren laughed bitterly. That their perfect daughter is actually a fraud? That I can't handle their expectations without chemical assistance? They'd be devastated. Maybe that's what needs to happen, I suggested carefully. Maybe they need to see the real consequences of the pressure they put on us. Easy for you to say, Lauren's voice hardened. They barely have expectations for you. I'm the one carrying this family's legacy. That's not fair, life isn't fair, she interrupted, suddenly standing. I've worked too hard to let anything threaten my future. I'm going to Yale, I'm going to be successful, and nothing will stand in my way. Something in her tone sent warning signals through my body. I shifted subtly, creating more distance between us on the narrow roof section. Lauren, you're scaring me. I'm scaring myself, she admitted, an unsettling calm replacing her previous agitation. She stepped closer as I instinctively moved back. But I figured it out. The problem isn't the pills or the pressure. It's the distractions. Like your sudden interest in art school and everyone making such a big deal about your photography. My back now pressed against the dormer window of my bedroom, retreat impossible. Lauren stood between me and the open window I'd climbed through. "What are you saying?" I asked, though something primal in me already recognized the danger. "I'm saying," Lauren replied with unnerving clarity, "that sometimes problems require permanent solutions." Her movement was swift and precise, hands connecting with my shoulders in a powerful push that left no doubt about intent. There was a suspended moment where I teetered on the edge, arms windmilling desperately for balance. Lauren's expression contained no anger, only cold resolution. Then gravity claimed me. The fall lasted both an eternity and an instant. I remember fragments. The scrape of roof tiles against my grasping fingers, the startled expression of our neighbor walking her dog, the blue October sky spinning overhead. Then impact, my body connecting with the stone patio 2 stories below with a sickening crunch that reverberated through my bones. Pain exploded everywhere at once, then receded into strange numbness. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Through tunnel vision, I saw Lauren's panicked face peering from the roof, genuine horror replacing her previous determination. She disappeared, presumably running downstairs. Consciousness came in waves. Father's clinical voice, possible pneumothorax, definite pelvic fracture. Mother's wailing, what will people think? What will we tell everyone? Lauren's rehearsed story, she was taking photos on the roof. I tried to warn her about getting too close to the edge. Paramedics appeared in my fragmented awareness. Oxygen mask, neck brace, backboard, the agonizing transfer to the ambulance. Father riding along, already making calls to colleagues at the hospital. The last thing I remember before surrendering to darkness was his voice, clinical and detached. My daughter had a photography accident. Yes, the middle one. Sarah. I woke in a hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of monitors confirming I was alive despite the evidence of pain suggesting otherwise. Inventory of injuries: broken ribs, punctured lung, fractured pelvis, concussion, countless contusions. My body, once functional if unremarkable, now broken and betrayed, not just by the fall, but by the hands that caused it. Mother and father flanked my bed like sentinels, not of protection but of narrative control. Their practice story already prepared. Sarah slipped and fell while taking photos on the roof. The photographer's equivalent of cleaning a loaded gun, a tragic accident born of carelessness rather than deliberate action. In their version, Lauren was the concerned sister who witnessed the accident, who ran for help, who cried appropriate tears at my bedside. Not the sister whose calculated push sent me plummeting toward what could easily have been my death. As consciousness solidified, I recognized the familiar Wilson family pattern asserting itself: appearance over reality, reputation over truth, perfection over accountability. Only now, the stakes had escalated from emotional damage to physical violence. And somehow, I was expected to play my assigned role in this twisted family performance, even with bones broken by my sister's hands. The hospital room became the stage for an elaborate performance directed by my parents. Every detail was managed, every narrative controlled. A young police officer arrived to take a routine statement about my accident, standard procedure for traumatic injuries. Sarah was taking photographs on the roof outside her bedroom window, Father explained smoothly before I could speak. She's always been passionate about her hobby, sometimes to the point of carelessness. Is that what happened, Miss Wilson? The officer asked me directly. Through medication haze and throbbing pain, I opened my mouth to contradict the story, but Mother quickly interjected. She's heavily sedated for pain management, she explained with practiced concern. The doctors say confusion is normal with concussion. We were just telling her what happened ourselves. She doesn't remember the fall. The officer nodded sympathetically, jotting notes. And you witnessed this, Dr. Wilson? I was in the driveway returning from work, Father fabricated effortlessly. I saw her slip and immediately rendered emergency aid. I wanted to scream the truth, but found words impossible through the combination of pain medication, physical trauma, and lifetime conditioning to defer to my parents' version of reality. The officer left with a fabricated account that protected Lauren while painting me as recklessly negligent. Later that evening, after Mother left to check on the other children, Father closed the hospital room door and sat beside my bed. His expression wasn't concerned or loving, but coldly pragmatic. "We need to discuss the story moving forward," he began without preamble. "Your accident was unfortunate, but we need to ensure it doesn't create unnecessary complications." "It wasn't an accident," I managed through cracked lips, voice barely above a whisper. Lauren pushed me. Father's expression didn't change. No shock, no disbelief, no denial. Just calculation, which somehow proved more devastating than any reaction I might have anticipated. He'd either already suspected the truth or considered it irrelevant. "Lauren's future can't be ruined by your carelessness," he stated flatly. "Yale wouldn't accept her with this hanging over her. This family's reputation depends on you keeping quiet." "She tried to kill me," I insisted, tears forming despite my determination to appear strong. "Don't be dramatic," Father dismissed. "If she wanted to kill you, she would have. Lauren lost her temper and you were injured. Regrettable, but not criminal. We'll handle this privately as a family." By pretending it didn't happen, my voice strengthened with outrage. "By focusing on what matters," he corrected. "Lauren has her Yale interview next week. Early admission decisions come next month. Your recovery will take approximately the same time. Everyone gets what they need. What about justice? What about my safety?" Father sighed, checking his watch impatiently. "Sarah, be practical. What would pressing charges accomplish? Lauren would lose her Yale acceptance. Our family name would be tarnished. Your mother's position in the community would be compromised. My patients might question my judgment. And you'd still be injured, still recovering. Nothing changes except our family is destroyed." He stood, straightening his designer tie. "Consider this a painful life lesson about awareness of your surroundings. And perhaps reconsider your college plans. Pre-med at Boston University would keep you close to home during recovery and set you on a more practical career path than photography." He pronounced my passion with the same distaste he might use for an unpleasant medical condition. Mother reinforced this message during her visit the following morning, her approach more emotional manipulation than Father's cold logic. "Darling, we've been researching art therapy programs," she announced, arranging flowers she'd brought, camera-ready concern for any nurses witnessing her performance. "It's a legitimate medical field where you could use your interest in art while still pursuing a respectable healthcare career." When I remained silent, she continued, voice lowering. "Your father and I would happily support such a practical compromise. Full tuition, living expenses, even a new camera. Your art school applications, however." She trailed off meaningfully. The threat was clear: play along with their version of events or lose any chance at college support. For a 16-year-old with no independent financial resources, this amounted to losing my future entirely. Tyler's visit provided momentary relief from the suffocating pressure of my parents' expectations. At 13, he remained innocent of family manipulation tactics, genuinely upset by my injuries. "Lauren said you were taking pictures and slipped," he mentioned while showing me his latest video game achievements on his phone. "She feels really bad. She said she should have stopped you from going out on the roof." I studied my brother's face, open, trusting, still believing in the family facade. Would revealing the truth protect him from future harm or merely destroy his sense of security? I chose silence, protecting his innocence a while longer. The hospital routine continued: vital checks, pain management, initial physical therapy assessments. Through it all, I observed my injuries being documented in medical records, X-rays displayed on light boards during doctor visits. Something about the first set of X-rays prompted furrowed brows from a young resident, quickly smoothed when my father's colleague Dr. Brennan entered the room. "Impressive fall injuries," Dr. Brennan commented, reviewing my chart. "Clean breaks, though, should heal nicely with proper care." "Sarah has always been prone to accidents," Father commented with a meaningful glance at his colleague. "Spatial awareness issues since childhood." Dr. Brennan nodded, understanding something unspoken. I'll sign off on the discharge planning for next week. Complete bed rest for 2 weeks, then gradual mobility with home healthcare support. The realization settled heavily. My father's medical connections were ensuring minimal questions about injuries inconsistent with a simple fall. The conspiracy extended beyond our immediate family, protected by professional courtesy and my father's influence. As recovery progressed, my growing awareness of this orchestrated cover-up intensified feelings of isolation. Until Mia sneaked into my hospital room during a rare period when both my parents were absent. Your mother tried to block my visits, she explained, placing a small gift bag on my bedside table. Said you needed family-only support during recovery. They're controlling the narrative, I whispered, fearful of being overheard despite our privacy. Lauren pushed me off the roof, Mia. Deliberately. And they're all pretending it was an accident. Instead of disbelief, Mia's expression showed grim confirmation of suspicions. I knew something was wrong with their story. You're too careful for a stupid accident. She removed a familiar object from her bag, my camera, miraculously intact. I found this in the bushes near where you fell. Memory card still inside. My hands trembled as I took the camera, my connection to truth in a situation built on lies. They told the police I was taking pictures when I fell. I wasn't. My camera was in my room. Lauren and I were arguing after she destroyed my portfolio. Mia's presence provided the first genuine compassion I'd experienced since the fall. What can I do? Keep this safe, I requested, returning the camera. If something happens to me. Don't talk like that, Mia interrupted, but took the camera. This isn't over. Before leaving, she shared one final piece of information. I met a woman in the waiting room, Mrs. Patel. She said she's a hospital social worker assigned to your case. Your parents rescheduled her twice, but she's persistent. Said she needs to speak with you alone as part of discharge protocol. This information provided the first glimmer of hope. Someone outside my parents' influence sphere might ask the right questions. When Mrs. Patel finally gained access to my room the following day, her quiet competence immediately distinguished her from the other professionals who deferred to my father's authority. I notice you haven't said much during family discussions about your accident, she observed after introducing herself. I'd like to hear your perspective, if you're comfortable sharing. The gentle invitation to speak my truth nearly broke my carefully maintained composure. After days of having my reality invalidated, someone was actually asking for my version. Yet years of family conditioning made betrayal unthinkable, regardless of circumstances. I fell, I repeated the official story, voice hollow. Mrs. Patel nodded, neither accepting nor challenging this response. Recovery from traumatic injuries involves more than physical healing. Sometimes the emotional impact can be equally significant, especially when an accident changes how we see ourselves or those around us. Her careful wording opened a door without forcing me through it. She placed her business card on my bedside table before leaving. If you ever need to talk about anything, my direct line is on the back. Completely confidential. That small card became a lifeline as I navigated the growing conflict between self-preservation and family loyalty. Someone believed something wasn't right, even if I couldn't yet speak the words aloud. 2 months after the accident, I found myself essentially imprisoned in our family home. My broken body required intensive physical therapy and constant pain management, but the physical limitations paled compared to the psychological confinement. Every aspect of my recovery occurred under my parents' watchful supervision. Medical appointments with father's colleagues, home healthcare providers selected for discretion rather than expertise, visitors carefully screened and limited. Lauren had departed for Yale immediately after receiving her early acceptance, conveniently removing herself from the scene of her crime. Our few interactions before her departure were surreal, her performance of concerned sister contrasting sharply with private moments when her eyes revealed neither remorse nor concern, only relief at escaping consequences. During one such moment, as she packed for college, I wheeled my chair to her doorway. How can you just leave, knowing what you did? She continued folding sweaters into her suitcase, not bothering to face me. We all have accidents, Sarah. I've forgiven you for telling Mom and Dad about seeing me at the mall when you clearly didn't. We're even now. The breathtaking false equivalence between a fabricated minor transgression and attempted murder revealed the depth of her moral bankruptcy. She genuinely believed her actions justified, her future more valuable than my life. This isn't over, I promised quietly. Lauren finally turned, her expression calculating. Actually, it is. You'll follow the script because you have nowhere else to go and no one who'll believe you over our parents. I'll excel at Yale while you recover from your carelessness. By summer, this will be a fading family anecdote about Sarah's artistic recklessness. Her casual dismissal of nearly killing me crystallized something vital. I needed to escape this family before they destroyed me completely. My parents continued reinforcing their version of reality through subtle and overt pressure. Mother redecorated my bedroom while I was hospitalized, removing photography posters and art supplies, replacing them with medical reference books and pre-med brochures. Father scheduled informational interviews with medical school friends during my recovery, each conversation assuming my future career path was decided. Dr. Harrison mentioned a summer internship program for high school students interested in radiology, he announced during dinner. Perfect opportunity to build your resume while you complete physical therapy. The irony wasn't lost on me, specializing in viewing the very x-rays that could have revealed the truth about my injuries. Throughout this period, my parents maintained strict control over my pain medication, doling out pills according to their assessment of my needs rather than prescribed schedules. The resulting undermanaged pain reinforced my dependence while keeping me slightly foggy, compliant, and less likely to contradict their narrative. My only act of rebellion was secret documentation of my recovery. When alone, I used my phone to photograph my healing body, the yellowing bruises, surgical scars, physical therapy progress. I recorded voice notes about inconsistencies in my parents' story and my actual memories of the incident. Each digital record created evidence contradicting the official narrative, though I had no clear plan for using this information. Mrs. Patel became an unexpected ally during outpatient therapy sessions. My parents couldn't reasonably object to the hospital's post-trauma counseling protocol without raising suspicions, so they reluctantly allowed these appointments. Recovery involves reclaiming your voice, she noted during one session. Trauma survivors often report feeling silenced or invalidated by those around them, which compounds the original injury. Her careful phrasing offered permission to acknowledge what was happening without directly challenging my family's version. During our fourth session, I finally voiced a partial truth. My family prefers their version of what happened over mine. Mrs. Patel nodded, maintaining neutral professionalism while passing me a new business card. Sometimes hospital environments aren't conducive to complete honesty. My private practice address is on this card, should you ever need to continue our conversations in a different setting. The offer of resources outside my parents' influence sphere represented a potential escape route I carefully memorized. In January, during my parents' annual charity gala attendance, I seized a rare opportunity for unsupervised investigation. Using my gradually improving mobility, I searched Lauren's room for the prescription bottle I'd glimpsed before the fall. Despite her departure for college, my parents had preserved her space exactly as she'd left it, shrine to the golden child. After 30 minutes of careful searching, I located a false bottom in her desk drawer containing not one but 3 prescription bottles, each with different names and prescribing doctors. Online research confirmed my suspicions. Adderall, Ritalin, and Modafinil, all performance enhancement drugs and prescription stimulants commonly abused for academic advantage. The discovery added another dimension to Lauren's desperate protection of her perfect image. Not only was she willing to eliminate perceived threats through violence, but her entire academic success relied on illegal substance use. The golden child's achievements were as artificially constructed as our family's perfect image. I photographed the bottles and returned them exactly as found, adding this evidence to my growing documentation. My purpose remained unclear, but instinct drove me to gather proof of reality in a household built on fabrication. As winter melted into spring, My physical recovery progressed faster than my parents anticipated. The same determination they'd dismissed in my photography now fueled intensive physical therapy. Each painful step toward mobility represented one step closer to eventual escape from their control. College application season approached, my last chance to create a future outside the path my parents had designated. While they believed me resigned to local pre-med programs, I secretly applied to art schools with Mia's help, using her address for correspondence. The facade cracked when April college decision letters arrived. Mother casually mentioned, "The financial aid forms for BU pre-med are complete. We should hear about your package soon. What about RISD and other art programs?" I asked carefully. Her brief hesitation confirmed my suspicion. Those applications weren't submitted. Your father and I decided against encouraging unrealistic career paths during your recovery. They hadn't just pressured me toward their preferred future, they'd actively eliminated alternatives without my knowledge or consent. The systematic dismantling of my autonomy extended beyond the present into my entire future. You had no right, I stated, a rare direct challenge to their authority. We had every right, Father countered, looking up from his journal. As your parents and financial supporters, we're making decisions in your best interest. This photography obsession has already cost you physically. It's time to grow up and accept reality. The crushing realization that they would control my future indefinitely nearly broke my resolve. Without financial independence, I remained trapped in their narrative regardless of physical recovery. The hopelessness of my situation settled heavily as spring advanced toward summer. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly during Lauren's brief return home for spring break. While my parents hosted a welcome home dinner for the returning scholar, I searched her room again, looking for updated evidence of continued drug use at Yale. Instead, I found something far more damning, her journal, carelessly left in her weekend bag. Against lifelong conditioning about privacy, I opened it, justifying the invasion as necessary self-preservation. Among descriptions of Yale courses and social climbing strategies, one entry from shortly after the accident stopped my breath. Problem solved with S. Parents completely on board with the accident story. Yale interviewer actually sympathized about my traumatic experience witnessing my sister's fall. Turned potential disaster into compelling personal essay material. Sometimes solutions require decisive action when too much is at stake. The clinical description of nearly killing me as problem solved and leveraging my injuries for Yale admissions advantage triggered an immediate panic attack. Chest tightening, vision narrowing, I stumbled from her room clutching the journal, gasping for breath. Mother found me collapsed in the hallway, immediately assuming physical recovery setback rather than psychological breakdown. The resulting emergency room visit introduced a new doctor to my case, Dr. Rivera, attending physician unfamiliar with my father's influence network. Your symptoms suggest anxiety attack rather than physical regression, she noted after initial assessment. But I'd like updated x-rays to ensure no new complications with your healing fractures. As technicians positioned me for fresh images, Dr. Rivera reviewed my medical file with increasing focus on the original injury documentation. Something in her expression suggested professional concern beyond routine follow-up. The x-rays would soon speak louder than any family story, beginning the collapse of a conspiracy built to protect the wrong person at the expense of justice and truth. Dr. Rivera's expression changed subtly as she examined the new x-rays alongside my original injury films. Her professionally neutral demeanor gave way to focused intensity as she moved between images, occasionally referring to my chart notes. I recognized the shift, the moment medical observation transformed into active investigation. I'd like to discuss these results privately, she announced, glancing pointedly at my mother, who had maintained her position beside my exam table. Standard protocol for patients over 16. I'm her mother, came the predictable objection. Sarah is still recovering from significant trauma and needs family support during medical discussions. Nevertheless, Dr. Rivera maintained firmly, hospital policy ensures patient confidentiality. The consultation room is just across the hall if Sarah wishes to include you afterward. Mother's tight smile failed to mask her frustration at this unexpected challenge to her control. "I'll be right outside, Sarah. Remember, Dr. Brennan is expecting us for follow-up tomorrow." The implied reminder of our family's proper medical connections hung in the air as she reluctantly exited. Once alone, Dr. Rivera positioned the X-ray films side by side on the light board. "Sarah, I'm going to speak directly. These injuries don't match a simple fall. The angle of impact suggests you were pushed." The professional validation of reality I'd been denied for months broke something inside me. Tears came without warning, months of suppressed truth seeking release. "Take your time," Dr. Rivera offered quietly, sliding a box of tissues toward me. "But I need to understand what actually happened." These inconsistencies raise serious concerns. Through broken sentences and occasional sobs, I revealed the truth: Lauren's escalating behavior, the roof confrontation, the deliberate push, my parents' orchestrated cover-up. As my account unfolded, Dr. Rivera took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions without judgment or disbelief. "This explains the discrepancies in your initial treatment notes," she confirmed. "The fracture patterns and impact trauma never aligned with an accidental fall narrative." Your father's colleague noted these inconsistencies, but ultimately signed off on the accident report. "No one would believe me over my parents," I explained. "They've convinced everyone I'm confused about what happened." Dr. Rivera's expression hardened. "Medical evidence doesn't lie, even when people do. These X-rays tell a clear story of assault, not accident." She outlined immediate next steps. Hospital administration would be notified of potential medical ethics violations, and as a mandatory reporter, she was legally obligated to file a report with both police and family services. "What will happen now?" I asked, equal parts terrified and relieved. "A formal investigation," she explained. "Your safety is the priority. We can arrange temporary placement outside your home during the process." Before I could respond, commotion erupted in the hallway, my father's authoritative voice demanding access, invoking professional courtesy and parental rights. The hospital security officer outside my door held firm, following Dr. Rivera's instructions for privacy. When my parents were eventually allowed in, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Father immediately recognized the X-rays displayed and the potential threat they posed to his carefully constructed narrative. "Dr. Rivera," he addressed her with forced collegiality, "I appreciate your thoroughness, but Sarah's case is being managed by our family physician. These additional tests seem unnecessary and potentially confusing for her recovery." "Actually, Dr. Wilson," she countered professionally, "these images clarify rather than confuse. They demonstrate injury patterns inconsistent with an accidental fall and highly consistent with a directed force application, a push." Mother gasped dramatically. "What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Dr. Rivera stated firmly. "I'm directly stating that the medical evidence contradicts the accident report filed after Sarah's initial admission. Hospital administration has been notified, and as required by law, I've contacted authorities to investigate." "This is outrageous," Father's voice lowered dangerously. "You're overstepping professional boundaries based on incomplete information. My daughter has a history of spatial awareness issues and risk-taking behavior. Her fall was thoroughly documented by witnesses." The same arguments that had silenced me for months now seemed transparent and desperate when directed at an objective medical professional with evidence contradicting their claims. "Sarah has provided a different account," Dr. Rivera replied, maintaining composure. "One that aligns with the physical evidence." All eyes turned to me, the invisible middle child suddenly the center of attention. For years, I'd craved my parents' focus, but now their gaze carried only calculation of damage control rather than concern. "Sarah," Mother employed her gentlest tone, "you're confused again, mixing up bad dreams with reality. We understand. Trauma does terrible things to memory. But we were there. We know what happened." For a moment, lifetime conditioning nearly reasserted itself, the impulse to accept their reality, to doubt my own experience, to return to the safety of compliance. Then I remembered Lauren's journal entry, problem solved with S. I reached into my bag and withdrew 3 pieces of evidence I'd brought to the hospital. Lauren's journal entry, carefully photographed, the photo from my camera's memory card showing Lauren's expression just before the push, and my documented recovery photos showing injuries inconsistent with the reported accident. "I'm not confused," I stated, voice steadier than I'd thought possible. "Lauren pushed me because I threatened to reveal her prescription drug abuse. You covered it up to protect her Yale admission and your reputations. Everything I've said is true, and now the X-rays prove it." Father's face transformed from controlled concern to cold fury. "You have no idea what you're doing. This vindictive attention-seeking will destroy this family. Is that what you want?" "I wanted parents who valued my safety over appearances," I answered honestly. "I wanted a sister who saw me as a person, not competition. I wanted truth to matter in our family. Since none of those things exist, I'll settle for justice and protection." The hospital room door opened to admit hospital security, a police detective, and a family services representative. The formal investigation had begun, setting in motion consequences my family had never anticipated when constructing their perfect facade. "Dr. and Mrs. Wilson," the detective addressed my parents, "we'd like to ask you some questions about your daughter's injuries from October. We also need to contact your other daughter at Yale." Mother collapsed dramatically into a chair, while father maintained rigid control. "Our attorney will meet us at the station. We have nothing to hide, but refuse to be ambushed without proper representation." As they were escorted from the room, father delivered a final threat disguised as concern. "Think carefully about your next steps, Sarah. Once certain doors close, they cannot be reopened. Families should protect each other, not destroy each other." The family services representative, a calm woman named Ms. Winters, explained I wouldn't be returning home while the investigation proceeded. "We'll arrange temporary placement until the situation stabilizes. Is there someone you'd feel comfortable staying with temporarily?" Mia's family immediately came to mind, the genuine warmth and honesty of their household contrasting sharply with the perfectly arranged emptiness of my own. As I provided Mia's contact information, the weight of 16 years of invalidation began lifting. The X-rays had spoken what I couldn't, truth visible in black and white, undeniable evidence that my reality was the accurate one. The broken bones revealed on those films somehow helped mend my broken sense of reality, validating what I'd always known but been conditioned to doubt. The family explosion occurred rapidly over subsequent days. Lauren was called back from Yale, her perfect collegiate experience interrupted by police questioning. Tyler, confused and betrayed by revelations about his idealized older sister, retreated to our grandparents' home, struggling to reconcile conflicting versions of family reality. My parents presented a united front of denial despite mounting evidence. When Lauren eventually confessed under pressure of multiple witness statements and physical evidence, they shifted seamlessly to damage control, hiring top attorneys to frame the incident as momentary adolescent impulse rather than calculated attempt at serious harm. Their final ultimatum came through their lawyer during a supervised family meeting. "Recant my accusations, accept the accident narrative with modified details acknowledging Lauren's role in encouraging risky behavior, and return to the family fold with promises of therapy and improved communication." In exchange, they would fully fund my education at an approved art school and provide appropriate medical care through recovery. The alternative was clear: proceed with charges against Lauren and be permanently cut off financially and emotionally from the family. Sometimes family loyalty requires difficult compromises, Mother explained with rehearsed compassion. "We can heal together and move forward stronger." The old Sarah might have capitulated, accepting partial validation as better than none, sacrificing justice for approval. But the Sarah who had survived being pushed from a roof, who had endured months of gaslighting during painful recovery, who had finally seen her reality confirmed through irrefutable evidence, that Sarah recognized the offered compromise as merely another form of silencing. "I choose truth," I stated simply. "Even without family." 6 months after the X-rays spoke their truth, my life bore little resemblance to the carefully controlled existence I'd known within the Wilson family. I now lived with Mia's family in their warm, modest apartment above their restaurant. The Castillos had welcomed me without hesitation when the Family Services investigation determined my home environment unsafe during legal proceedings. Family is who protects you, not who shares your blood, Mia's mother told me while preparing our dinner one evening, wisdom that helped reshape my understanding of belonging. The legal aftermath unfolded with consequences my parents had desperately tried to prevent. Lauren received probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment rather than prison time, her age and previously clean record factoring into sentencing. Yale rescinded her admission upon learning the full circumstances, destroying the future my parents had prioritized above my safety. My parents faced charges for obstruction and failure to report, their professional reputations tarnished by public revelation of their cover-up. Father's hospital privileges underwent review, and mother's social standing collapsed as former friends distanced themselves from scandal. The family that had valued appearance above all now experienced the reality they had most feared, public exposure of their dysfunction. Throughout this period, I focused on rebuilding my life through education and creative expression. The investigation uncovered my parents' deliberate sabotage of my art school applications, but Mrs. Patel connected me with advocacy resources that helped secure a prestigious scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design's photography program. My portfolio, rebuilt from scratch after Lauren's destruction, now featured documentary-style images chronicling recovery and resilience. The most unexpected development came from Tyler. Initially confused and angry about family revelations, my younger brother eventually reached out after 3 months of silence. At 14, he demonstrated remarkable emotional maturity navigating the family fracture. "I miss having a sister who doesn't lie to me," he admitted during our first meeting at a neutral coffee shop, supervised by our grandparents. "Lauren keeps saying everything was a misunderstanding, and Mom and Dad won't talk about it at all. I just want someone to tell me the truth." Our rebuilt relationship became one of genuine connection rather than performed family unity. Living with our grandparents while our parents focused on legal defenses, Tyler found space to develop his own identity outside the perfect family narrative. Our weekly video calls and monthly in-person meetings allowed us to create a sibling bond based on honesty instead of hierarchy. Mrs. Patel introduced me to a support group for survivors of family violence, where I met others whose experiences mirrored aspects of mine. Listening to their stories helped contextualize my own, replacing isolation with community understanding. Gradually, I recognized patterns in my family dynamics that had enabled escalating abuse, the scapegoating of one child, golden child syndrome, parental emotional neglect disguised as high expectations, and systematic reality distortion when family image was threatened. Healing doesn't mean forgetting or minimizing what happened, our group facilitator explained. It means integrating the experience into your life narrative without letting it define your entire future. This framework helped me approach my photography with renewed purpose. My developing portfolio, The X-rays Spoke Louder, featured stark black and white images juxtaposing medical evidence with family photographs, concrete reality against carefully constructed appearances. When featured in a student exhibition, the series attracted attention from local media and advocacy organizations for its unflinching examination of family violence and institutional enabling. The most complex aspect of recovery involved Lauren. After 6 months of court-mandated therapy, she requested contact through her treatment program. Initially reluctant, I eventually agreed to supervised communication with my therapist's support. Her first letter acknowledged responsibility without excuses. I thought I was protecting my future by eliminating obstacles, but I was actually destroying everything that matters. No college acceptance or parental approval could ever justify what I did to you. While not immediately forgiving, I recognized the value of this accountability for both our healing processes. Our carefully boundaried communication evolved through letters to eventual video calls, each interaction rebuilding basic trust without erasing consequences. Lauren's path involved intensive treatment for both substance dependency and the perfectionism that had warped her moral framework, transforming academic competition into justification for violence. My parents attempted reconciliation on their terms once the legal proceedings concluded with plea agreements. Their version of family reunification came with conditions: private acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but public maintenance of modified accident narrative, therapist-supervised family sessions aimed at eventual public reconciliation, and financial support contingent on family loyalty moving forward. "We've all made mistakes," Father offered during a mediated meeting. "It's time to rebuild as a family unit." "Some things aren't mistakes," I countered. "They're choices. You chose Lauren's future over my safety. You chose reputation over truth. You chose appearance over reality. Those weren't errors in judgment, but deliberate value decisions." Mother's tears, once so effective at manipulating my compliance, now seemed performative rather than genuine. "We only wanted what was best for everyone." "No," I corrected gently but firmly. "You wanted what looked best to everyone. There's a difference." I declined their conditional reconciliation, establishing instead my own terms for limited contact: acknowledgement of full reality without minimization, respect for my independence, including educational and career choices, and abandonment of perfect family pretense in favor of authentic, flawed relationship. "I don't need a perfect family," I explained. "I need an honest one. When you're ready for that, we can try again." As my first year of college approached, my photography evolved beyond documentation of trauma toward broader exploration of hidden realities. My images examine spaces between public presentation and private truth, not just in families but institutions, communities, and cultural narratives. Professor Jimenez, my faculty advisor, noted the maturity in my perspective unusual for first-year students. "You're not creating voyeuristic trauma art," she observed while reviewing my portfolio. "You're developing a visual language for authenticity in a world that often rewards performance over truth." This validation of artistic purpose helped transform painful experience into meaningful expression. When offered the opportunity to teach a weekend photography workshop for young trauma survivors through a local advocacy center, I found unexpected healing in helping others find their visual voice. 17-year-old Zach, whose father's abuse had been similarly concealed by family denial, captured particularly powerful images of locked doors and broken keys. "Before taking pictures, I couldn't explain what happened without crying," he shared during our final session. "Now I can show people instead of just telling them." His words crystallized my understanding of photography's power: not just artistic expression, but evidence creation, reality validation when verbal testimony might be dismissed or disbelieved. The X-rays had spoken for me when words failed. Now my camera spoke for others facing similar silencing. Looking back from my new vantage point, I recognized the painful irony of my family's obsession with perfect appearance. In trying to maintain flawless external image, they created internal brokenness far more damaging than any public imperfection might have been. Their fear of looking bad ultimately created the very public exposure and judgment they desperately sought to avoid. My healing journey continues. Physical scars faded, but emotional recovery ongoing. Some days still bring flashbacks of falling, momentary doubts about reality when memories conflict with years of programmed family narrative. But these moments no longer define my future or determine my worth. The truth remains simple yet profound: silence protects the wrong people. Speaking truth, however painful, creates the only path to genuine healing. The X-rays revealed not just my broken bones, but my unbreakable spirit, evidence that reality eventually surfaces despite efforts to contain it behind perfect family portraits and practiced smiles. Today, my camera lens focuses on both shadow and light, capturing complete human experience rather than carefully curated highlights. My most powerful images embrace imperfection, finding beauty in authentic reality rather than constructed perfection. In this approach, I've discovered not just artistic vision but life philosophy: Genuine connection requires vulnerability, and true strength emerges not from appearing flawless, but from surviving brokenness. The family I've created through chosen relationships provides what my biological family couldn't: acceptance without performance requirements, love without conditional approval, and truth without image management. These connections, built on authentic foundation rather than appearance, offer stability my perfect-looking family never achieved. Have you ever had to choose between painful truth and comfortable lies? Between family loyalty and personal safety? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support others sharing their experiences. Remember, your story deserves to be heard and believed, even when others try to silence it. Thank you for witnessing mine. Together, we can create communities where truth speaks louder than appearances, and healing becomes possible through shared understanding.